Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Meiman, get a ghost rider at the beginning. Chapter 1. A mysterious existence from a distant place. The worshipper of money, the controller of desire, the greedy of endless wealth, the devil who controls people's hearts. I bear witness to you with the moon, I sacrifice to you with my life, and I guide you with my own blood. Bound by a contract made in ancient times, I summon you to appear in the world. On the outskirts of the city, in an abandoned wooden house, a boy of 17 or 18 years old was kneeling in front of an ancient and mysterious parchment, muttering to himself the spell on the paper. There was a sheep in front of him, and around the sheep, a six-pointed star was drawn with blood. A candle was lit at each corner of the six-pointed star, and the moonlight outside the window just shone on the parchment. After the boy finished reciting the spell, he picked up a dagger and pricked his finger. A few drops of blood dripped on the parchment. The runes on the parchment began to come alive, and they opened their mouths to absorb the boy's dripping blood. The six-pointed star began to shine brightly, and the sheep inside began to cry uneasily. After a while, it began to wail in pain. Slowly, the sheep's body began to shrink, as if something was taking away its flesh and blood. In the end, the sheep turned directly into a skeleton, with no flesh and blood left on its body. The scene was extremely horrifying. "Ah, who is calling me?" After a burst of light, a middle-aged man with white hair in a suit appeared in the room, looking at the boy with soft eyes. "Is it you who wants something from me, my child?" The devil, who turned into a handsome white-haired middle-aged man, asked with a smile. "Yes, my mother is sick and needs a lot of money, but I can't find a place to pay for the goods, so I can only ask the devil." The boy swallowed and quietly took a step back. "Ha ha, kid, then you have found the right person. I can give you money, a lot of money to cure your mother, but it only requires you to pay a small price." The devil in the suit smiled kindly. "You don't want my soul, right?" The boy took another step back, looking at the door from time to time, with a sign that he was planning to escape at any time. The boy's actions were noticed by the devil in the suit, but he didn't panic at all. "You have to be patient in doing business." A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth and he said, "No, no, no, that is the church's slander against us. In fact, the devil is the most particular about the spirit of contract. Unless you voluntarily give up your soul, it is impossible for us to get it. And since you can summon devils, you probably know our credibility roughly." The boy seemed to take a breath, bit his lower lip, and looked firmly at the devil. "Then what do I have to pay to get money to save my mother?" Seeing that his prey had taken the bait, the devil in the suit smiled even brighter. "I only want you to give up your life. How much you are willing to pay is up to you." The devil in the suit waved his hand, and an ancient piece of parchment and a quill appeared in front of the boy's eyes. The surrounding light seemed to be sucked in, making it look strangely like a black hole. "With a lifespan of $10,000 a year, you can exchange it for as much as you want." The man in the suit looked at the boy's clothes in front of him and knew that this business was done. The other party's dirty clothes, torn shoes, and hair that seemed to have never been shampooed all showed that he was in financial difficulty. "Then, I sign for 1 year." The boy took off his quill and asked cautiously, "Of course, my child, your lifespan is as high as 98 years. 1 year is completely insignificant to you." The devil in the suit said, still smiling. "Do I really have a lifespan of 98 years? The boy asked hesitantly. "Of course, I can guarantee that." After hearing this, the boy finally stopped hesitating. After looking at the devil in the suit, he firmly picked up the parchment and read it over. Although he didn't recognize the devil's mantra above, the soul fluctuations from the contract allowed him to understand the content above. $10,000 in exchange for 1 year of life. The boy looked at it several times and felt that there should be no trap. He gritted his teeth and wrote down 60 years, and then signed his name at the end. Jack Sparrow. After the boy signed, the parchment began to glow white, and soon turned into 2 golden lights and flew into the 2 bodies. Both sides suddenly felt that there was an invisible and intangible power of contract in their souls. "Excuse me, when can I get my money?" The boy looked at the devil in the suit expectantly. "Ha ha, don't worry, the devil is very particular about the spirit of contract. You should buy lottery tickets often. One of the several lottery tickets in your pocket can be directly exchanged for a corresponding amount of US dollars." "That's great, I'm going to exchange the money quickly. The boy saw this and was about to leave. Wait, have you forgotten something? In the dim room at night, the candlelight began to flicker without wind at some point, and the devil in a suit under the shadow no longer had the kind human face before, but looked a bit ferocious. The corners of the devil's mouth slowly raised, revealing 2 pointed teeth, and 2 horns began to grow on his head. The contract doesn't say when I will take away your life. And, you don't have that long a life at all. The boy took a few steps back and started to panic, but. The devil appreciates the panic expression of humans. Every human knows that devils are not good people, but they can't help but be greedy and make deals with them. The result is that most human beings not only have their souls taken away by the devil, but their bodies are also enslaved. The devil is the most particular about the spirit of contract, and he is also the one who doesn't abide by the contract the most. Besides, I'm hungry. Come into my belly, Jack Sparrow. The devil in the suit began to transform. His skin became red, his eyes began to turn dark, the whites of his eyes disappeared, 2 fangs appeared in his mouth, and his hands turned into huge claws. The devil in the suit grabbed the boy named Jack and looked at the panicked boy. The devil was very excited. It opened its big mouth, with the corners of the mouth cracked directly to the base of the ears, and saliva was constantly flowing out, and it also revealed several rows of saw teeth that could not be mixed inside. It not only wanted the boy's soul, but also. After taking 1 sip, the devil felt a sharp pain in his mouth, and many pills broke off. Waves of burning sensations of flames came from his hands. The devil in the suit hurriedly threw the boy in his hand out, looked at the boy and froze. The boy didn't know when he had changed his appearance. His skin became red, black smoke and flames continued to emit from the cracked parts of his body, and his head turned directly into a flaming skull. Hey. The skull smiled lowly. He looked up at the devil in the suit. Although his expression could not be seen, the devil in the suit could naturally feel the other person's creepy smile, as if a lion saw a sheep. Ha. The other party's laughter slowly grew from small to loud, and finally to laughter. I really like devils who don't pay attention to the spirit of contract. Besides, my name is not Jack Sparrow. The devil in suit seemed to have remembered something at this time, and hurriedly took a few steps back, looking at the person in front of him in horror. Deep in the skull's eyes, the originally dark eye holes also lit up 2 flames, getting brighter and brighter. Also, I'm hungry too. New York, Brooklyn, 44th Street, a man was riding an off-road motorcycle to the door of a bar. He was humming happily while parking the car, obviously in a good mood. This man in his early 20s is Roger's true face. In his previous life, he was an otaku. While playing a VR Marvel game, he knocked over his fat otaku and died. When he came to this world, he discovered a cheat, which was a player system. Later, I will slowly explore the various uses of this system. This system will not talk to the host, but it can create character skins, learn skills, and sometimes accept some tasks and get rewards. By chance, he met an exorcist, Constantine, known as Za Kong. After seeing that the other person was skillful in deceiving the devil and using the hell devil as a wool, he met him. Roger had an idea, whether the character skin of his player system could deceive the devil. Because the character skin is equivalent to setting up a game account. Not only the race can be changed, but the gender, hair, height and appearance can also be changed at the same time. After finding a little devil to try and succeed for the first time, Roger understood that the most powerful thing about his golden finger was the character's skin, and he was out of control from then on. Create a character, trade with the lending devil, obtain the other party's items or money, and then when the other party wants to return the principal and interest, you can uninstall the character skin to avoid contract penalties. After uninstalling the character template, the devil's mantra cannot find itself, and the contract is invalid for it, just like the enemies in the game can only see your online name, but not your real name. Finally, in an extremely rare opportunity, he deceived the demon king of hell, Mephisto, and obtained the other party's wrath of God, which is the Ghost Rider. Then not only did he not work for him, he also beat up the boss. Because Mephisto is just a clone in the human world. From then on, Roger bid farewell to the days of hiding in Tibet, and openly rolled the wool of the devils in hell. Not only did he roll their wool, but he also killed the sheep for meat every time. In the end, Everyone in hell knew about it. There was a man named Za Luo who was more terrifying than Za Kong. Not only did he like to borrow goods, but he also liked to beat up the devil who borrowed the goods. The one I killed last night was probably a new devil. He didn't know the dangers of the world, so he came out to lend money so carelessly. As a result, not only was the wool stolen by Roger, but the mutton was also eaten. The devils in hell seem to need to abide by some rules in the human world. Those at a level similar to Mephisto can only get a clone to come over, while the weak devils can come directly in person. I don't know if it's because Karmatage is in charge, so powerful devils and demons don't dare to come here with me. After Roger came to this world, he found that it was no different from the Marvel world. There was Hydra, Captain America, and Stark Industries. He just started thinking about going to Karmatage to learn magic. However, after searching for the New York Temple several times and failing to find it, either because there was no ape dung or because Ancient One was unwilling to accept him, Roger simply gave up. After entering the bar, Roger went directly to the bar without hesitation and said hello. "Dad, give me a cup of 3-color milk tea." "Hey, long time no see, Luo, have you gone somewhere to make a fortune again?" The bartender is a bald-bearded man and the owner of this Dad's bar. His name is Lei, nicknamed Dad. At the same time, there is another identity, that is, an information dealer and an intermediary businessman. What kind of businessman is, of course, a businessman who sells various exorcism materials. This bar appears to be a bar, but is actually an intermediary where some exorcists trade information or purchase things. If you want holy water or enchanted bullets, give the bar owner a deposit and he will get it for you within a few days, with only a small agency fee. Sometimes Roger found some rare gadgets, but he didn't have any use for them, so he would sell them here. Haha, I can't say I made a fortune, but I made a small profit. Roger took out 2 thick stacks of US dollars, then turned around and shouted boldly to the people in the bar. "Everyone's drinking today is on me, so feel free to drink until you vomit." When the various exorcists and mercenaries in the bar heard this, they raised their glasses to signal. "Ah, good job Luo. Luo, you are our hero. Dad, bring me a cup of 3-color milk tea. I've been wanting to try it for a long time. Bring me a box of vodka, I'm going to sleep here tonight." A big man with a furry bear yelled directly. Exorcists are not always fine every time, because you never know what level of demons you are facing, and you might die next time you perform an exorcism. So it is normal to make money to get drunk or find women to relieve stress. Because you earn a lot, you spend a lot, and a lot of special materials are wasted every time you perform an exorcism. Those exorcists who save money often die during the mission, so it is not surprising that some exorcists are poor. "Luo, here you go, your wine." Dad handed over a glass of prepared wine. "This drink is made up of 3 different liquors and looks like milk tea, so this cocktail also has a name, called 3-color cup milk tea." Roger took the cocktail and took a sip. A cool feeling went down his throat and went straight to his stomach, followed by a burning warmth, and then turned into a feeling of comfort that went straight to his brain, relieving the fatigue of the day. "Ah, Ness, that's great. Dad, your bartending skills are getting better and better." Roger put down the wine glass and asked immediately, "Are there any good missions in the dark world recently?" The bar owner happily wiped the wine glass. "Which task do you want, something or a banknote?" Roger waved his hand and said, "Let's talk about it. Paper currency is easy to understand. It is the task issuer who uses money as reward. The so-called things are items used by people who post tasks as rewards. If such tasks are posted by ordinary people, there is usually a possibility of missing them. Because some of the reward items given by ordinary people are handed down from ancestors, such as parchment with magic runes, books, or specimens of some magical creatures. As for the value, it depends on whether the person accepting the task needs it. Generally, there will be 2 situations, one is the item that has been identified, and the other is the item that has not been identified. Those who miss out are always the latter, because there are endless possibilities for unidentified items. Sometimes, after paying for it with your life, you find that it is a waste. Some discover that it is an artifact, and in this case, it usually depends on the exorcist's own vision to decide whether to accept the task. Well, recently there seems to be a pair of silly brothers who exorcise demons for others for free and disrupt the entire market. Oh, tell me, is it the second generation of rich people? There are even free exorcists. Roger picked up the wine glass and took a sip of the cocktail again. The bar owner put the cleaned wine glass back on the counter and thought about it. Haha, a pair of rookie brothers. They are not rich second generation, and they don't have much magic power. They just rely on some materials to use methods to exorcise demons. The bar owner put the cleaned wine glass back on the counter and thought about it. The exorcism materials were bought from me. Oh, their names are Dean and Sam. Roger was stunned. Aren't these two brothers the Wolong brothers? They had not received any guidance in exorcism and went out to fight for justice with the help of a diary left by their father. Fortunately, he was so lucky that he didn't die every time. At this moment, a timid voice came from behind Roger. Excuse me, can I post tasks here? Roger looked back and saw a little boy about 10 years old, holding an Ultraman, looking around uneasily, timidly pulling Roger's sleeve and asking, "Young man, this is not the place you should be." Roger pointed to the sign beside him, "Underage drinking is prohibited." "I'm not here to drink, I'm here to issue a mission," the little boy said with courage. "Oh, posting a mission. Who told you, Dad, do you still accept missions from children?" Roger turned to look at the bar owner curiously. The bar owner shrugged. He was also baffled. Who would accept a task from a child? You must know that most of the tasks here are exorcism tasks, and a few are bodyguard tasks. But the child stretched out an index finger and pointed at Roger himself. "Me, are you sure you're not mistaken?" The little boy nodded wildly like a chicken pecking at rice, and then took out a photo from his school bag, which was a photo of a boy and Roger. "Jamie told me that you are a mercenary and can take on any mission, as long as I give you the most valuable thing as payment." Roger was dumbfounded when he saw it. The photo was indeed his. "The last time I met a child crying, I thought he was lost and kindly stepped forward to ask. I learned that the other person was afraid of being scolded when the results came out the next day because he didn't do well in the exam during the day." After learning that Roger was a mercenary, the child looked forward to asking if he could help steal the school examination papers and burn them. Roger originally wanted to refuse, but the child took out his beloved pocket watch and said it could be used as payment. When the pocket watch was taken out, it was recognized as silver by the game system and could be exchanged for 2 silver coins in the game store. As mentioned earlier, the game system can create character skins, but they need to be purchased with game currency, and game currency cannot be recharged with real banknotes. He can only accept tasks in exchange for rewards. Although the pocket watch given by the child is not valuable in reality, it can be sold for money in the game mall, so Roger, who is really fragrant, accepted the other party's task. He sneaked into the school secretly in the middle of the night, stole all the test papers, and then burned them. Since there were no casualties or property losses, this incident became a strange story for the New York police, but the boy knew that Roger was a person. Ha 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 ha. After hearing the child's brief description of Roger's task of stealing the school papers, Bar Dad Ray was amused and laughed. "Luo, you are so caring. If you come to drink from now on, I will give you a discount." "Then thank you very much." Roger thanked him awkwardly. Then Roger turned to look at the child. In reality, money is easy to get, but game coins are difficult to get. He has the mentality that no matter how small a mosquito is, it is still meat. Roger then asked the child, "Little guy, what's your name? What task do you want to issue? Let's talk about it first. You have to show me the reward first. I won't accept anything that doesn't suit you. My name is Tom, and I want you to help me find my mother. In return, I will give you this." The little boy raised the Ultraman in his hand. This is a limited edition of Tiga. It was released 2 years ago. It can be sold for a lot of money. Roger looked at this Tiga figure. Well, the limited edition is indeed very valuable, hundreds or thousands of dollars, but Roger looked at the 2 thick stacks on the bar that he had put down for dinner tonight. The beautiful knife. Young man. Just as he was trying to find a reason to reject the boy, he discovered that the boy's Ultraman began to slowly turn golden in his discerning vision. Roger blinked, and quickly opened the game panel to carefully identify the golden items, which can be exchanged for 1 gold coin. Hiss. "Good guy, I have never encountered an item that can be exchanged for gold coins in all these years. Is it possible that the rewards for children's tasks are higher? I accepted this task. Tell me what happened to your mother. Did you call the police? Roger asked. Some time ago, my mother received the news that my grandfather had passed away and went to deal with his funeral affairs. I happened to be sick at that time and did not go. Then after she left, there was no call back. She called the police for several days. No news. At this point, the little boy Tom looked at Roger with red eyes and tears. I'm so worried about my mommy. She is my only relative. Jamie said you are very capable. The only thing that is most valuable to me is this, you. Can you help me? Well, no problem, I'll take over this task. Where do you live now, alone? I'm currently staying at Jamie's house at number 76 Brown Street. When can you help me find my mother? There's no rush. Roger took a sip of wine. Tell me your mommy's name. I'll go to the police station to find out the situation first, and then set off. After all, I have to know where your mommy is. Sally. My mommy's name is Sally Karina. Okay, you go back first. I will go back to you tomorrow to get some information. Yeah, the little boy Tom nodded. Then you must find my mother. Roger waved and said it was no problem, and then the little boy walked out of the bar with cheerful steps. Oh, it seems that there will be another business here to take care of children in the future. Bar Dad Lay joked. Luo, do you want to buy exorcism weapons? I will make an exception and give you a discount this time. Roger drank the entire cocktail, then put it down and said, no, I'm the weapon. Then he walked out of the bar and came to the door. Roger took out a mobile phone and dialed a number. Beep, beep. Hey, George, I have something I want you to check. Don't say that. I've helped you solve a lot of troubles. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been promoted to sergeant so quickly. Okay, don't get off work yet. I'll do it right away. Come over. Roger twisted the accelerator of his Harley and drove towards the police station. George, a rookie policeman with a strong sense of justice, met Roger while investigating a death. Roger was an exorcist invited by the family of the deceased at the time. At that time, he had not yet become the Ghost Rider. Roger used a character's skin to trick the devil into taking on his own body, and then sent the devil back to hell. George admired Roger very much after seeing it, and felt that Roger was sacrificing himself for others, so he became friends with him. Roger later learned that George's full name was George Stacy. He didn't remember it at first, but it wasn't until he rose to the rank of sergeant in the New York branch after collaborating with Roger to solve several cases that he suddenly realized it. George Stacy may be Gwen's father, the director in Spider-Man, but he has not yet been promoted to the position of chief director. He is still a young police chief with an explosive sense of justice. As the most prosperous international metropolis, New York certainly has a lot of things going on, especially the tens of thousands of homeless people who have no jobs and are a breeding ground for criminals. They are the favorites of the devil. This resulted in countless devils and demons swarming in, and at a negligible price, a large number of lives and souls could be exchanged. Some homeless people who have no love in life may be willing to trade their souls if they die the next day if they are allowed to experience being a young model in a club. Fortunately, as the most prosperous city in the United States, there are countless talented people here. The most important thing is that there is a branch of Kamatage. So it's just some devils doing petty theft, a bigger devil. Anyway, Roger has never seen it, and he was probably photographed to death by Gu Yi. On the contrary, in some remote places, these demons are very arrogant because there are few or even no exorcists. The demons have no scruples and can do whatever they want. Drop drop. A mixed-race man wearing sunglasses rode a motorcycle and parked in front of a police station in Queens and honked the horn. The guard at the door saw it and directly picked up the walkie-talkie to notify George Stacy inside. If other people dared to honk their horns at the door of the police station, a police officer would step forward to question them with his gun on his waist. If it's a black man, haha, maybe I have to treat him to popcorn. But Roger and George Stacy were acquaintances, and the police station also had some consultants or informants. Once they got acquainted, it was easy to talk to them, except that they couldn't enter the police station at will. Roger got out of the car, took out an imported cigarette, lit it, and handed one to the guard. The guard smiled and took it. George has trouble with you again? The guard asked. Because every time there were some cases that could not be explained by science or police investigation, George Stacy would invite Roger to take a look, although it was charged. Whether it's a mercenary mission or an exorcism mission, Roger will charge a fee, and sometimes he will have to add money. That's wrong, Will. This time I have something to do with George. I want to help a child find his missing mother. A mother of a child. Is that what happened? Is the missing mother named Sally Karina? Guard Will asked. Yes, you know. Roger was surprised. Guard Will put away his smile and said with a serious expression, if it's her, that's right. If you hadn't come, I guess George would have planned to ask you for help, because you can always help him with some strange cases. Hey, Luo, you're here. Will, what are you talking about? A voice came, and it turned out to be George in police uniform walking out. We were talking about that Sally thing. As soon as he heard the name, George Stacy's expression became serious. When Roger looked at George's face, he knew he had come to the right place. It seemed that something unusual had happened to the woman named Sally. As for Sally, let's go into the conference room and talk about it. Will, help me register Luo. Okay, I'll take care of it. Guard Will said it was no problem. Except for those who were arrested, it was a normal procedure for everyone else to register at the police station. However, Roger was a regular visitor, so he had all the information. Roger followed George into the police station, and soon came to the office inside. After George poured 2 cups of instant coffee, he came to the conference table and handed a cup to Roger. Actually, if you don't come, I plan to go find you about Sally. George took a sip of coffee and frowned. He had a few more hairs in the past few days. What's going on? There seems to be something wrong with that person's disappearance. Roger asked curiously. Yes, that's what happened. After the child called the police, we found out everything. His mother, the woman named Sally, went back to deal with her deceased father's belongings and then disappeared. We thought it was some kind of murder or kidnapping, so we contacted the local police to check it out, and they said. At this point, George's expression was extremely weird, that Sally is living well, and goes to bars every day, changing men, and doesn't even want to go back to find her son. We called her, but she answered impatiently and said her son didn't want it anymore, so she hung up the phone. Roger touched his chin and thought, amnesia. That's not right. If you still remember your son, it doesn't mean you have amnesia. Could it be that some supernatural thing is causing trouble? Of course Roger is talking about those demons and demons. They like to play with human nature the most, especially making father and son, mother and son kill each other, or turning husband and wife into enemies. The more loving a family is, the more it can trigger their climax. I also suspected that it was those things that told our 2 guys who went to check the situation, and the result. Seeing George's weird and indescribable expression, Roger's curiosity was aroused again. It's not you 2 guys who are dead, is it? George Stacy shook his head. They are not dead, but they are just like that Sally. They seem to have changed. They eat, drink and have fun in the local area all day long and never come back. Even the director said he wanted to fire them and they didn't care. And one of them had a family. He used to love his wife and children, but now he said he wanted a divorce. His wife was old and ugly, so he didn't want her anymore. He was so angry that his wife directly found a lawyer and started liquidating the property. So I suspect that there must be something causing trouble in that place, which caused a drastic change in the temperament of those people. So you want to go with me to investigate what's going on, right? Roger took over. George Stacy nodded. Yes, you are the only person I know who can handle this kind of thing. Roger smiled and said, aren't you afraid that after you go, like them, you will not recognize your relatives and your wife and children? George Stacy smiled and said, I believe I will never be confused by anything. My love for their mother and daughter will never be confused by anything. At this moment, a lively and cute girl's voice came from the door. Daddy. George turned around and saw a pretty little girl smiling at George with a small mouth missing a few front teeth. Gwen, my baby, come here Daddy. The little loli jumped into George Stacy's arms, and George held her in circles, then laughed heartily. This is my baby girl, Gwen. Then George patted his baby girl and said, Baby, go to my office with your mother and wait for me. I will go over after I finish talking to Uncle Luo. Ahem, it's my brother, I'm not married yet. Gwen, who was still a little Lolita, kissed George sweetly and said, "Okay Daddy, goodbye Uncle." Then he jumped up and down, held hands with his mother at the door, and left. Roger rolled his eyes. He was a brother, not an uncle. This little kid was so disobedient. No wonder he died later. Luo, there's something wrong with your eyes. Don't you have an eye fetish? George turned his head and looked at Roger, feeling that something was wrong with the way he looked at his daughter. Ahem, don't get me wrong. You've known me for so long and you still don't know my orientation. Where did you say that? Oh, by the way, they will disown their relatives when they go to that town, right? Are the other people in the town normal? George continued, this is also where we are confused. Others in the town have never had any problems. It seems that there is a problem with the two guys we sent there and Sally. The three of them enjoy themselves in the bar every day, looking for partners, and spending time on laundry detergent. Roger answered thoughtfully, the source of everything is Sally. The reason why Sally went to the town was to deal with her deceased father. That is to say, the cause is her deceased father. Roger and George looked at each other at the same time and said this. Perhaps there are some strange things in her father's belongings. George reasoned using his many years of investigative experience. 9 times out of 10, those things made her forget her feelings, or simply took away her feelings. So she remembers her child but doesn't come back because the person who has lost their feelings has no love for their child. Well, George, after knowing the truth, do you still plan to carry out this mission personally? Roger asked. Someone has to deal with these things, not to mention there are 2 of our guys there. George smiled. Okay then, call me when you go. Do you plan to drive there? Roger drank the rest of the coffee in one gulp, reasoning that things were almost done at this point. Yes, we will set off tomorrow. 2 people will take over the driving. It will take about 7 or 8 hours to arrive. It is much faster than taking the train, you know. By the way, one more question, what is my reward this time? George, when traveling in this country, trains are really not as convenient as cars. Airplanes are another matter. George, a policeman, can't afford an airplane, and Roger is a moonlighter. Don't even think about it. After saying goodbye to George, Roger drove his motorcycle home to his home in the famous Hell's Kitchen, Queens. The reason why I bought here is because the house price is cheap. In a chaotic and disorderly place, housing prices are certainly not that high. Crimes are committed here every day, and there are countless homeless people. Roger chose a place close to the city that was relatively clean and safe. It was not because he was afraid of thieves and robbers, but because it was a headache for him to have his things stolen when he was not at home, because many of his things were hidden from view. This time he was going on a far journey to exorcise demons, so he had to prepare a lot of things. Solving it with force was his favorite thing. What he was afraid of was not solving it with force, which would be a headache. Roger was just a person who had watched thousands of episodes of Death's Little Monk. It didn't mean that he really is Sherlock Holmes. My wish to buy a house in my previous life came true in this life, although it was in a slum. To be precise, it doesn't count as a purchase. It was paid by the White Lady. Roger found a devil and made a wish for a house. Later, when the devil asked Roger to pay off his debt, Roger had already uninstalled the character skin, and the devil looked confused. Where are the people who are confused about borrowing money? Early the next morning, Roger came to wait at the door of George's house. Because he did not have a car, he only had a Harley motorcycle, so he had to take George's private car if he wanted to travel far. Hey, honey, Daddy will be back soon. Don't worry, this time I'm just looking for 2 guys. There's no murder. George kissed his daughter Gwen's face. Okay, Daddy, this is for you. It's the amulet Mommy and I bought at the church yesterday. Gwen handed over a cross. My dear, remember to leave early and come back early. George's wife warned, and then handed him the packed suitcase. Don't worry, there is no danger on this business trip, otherwise I wouldn't be alone. George smiled, took the suitcase and put it into the trunk of the car. He turned around and saw Roger and said hello. He knew that Roger didn't have a car because he had always been a motorcycle boy. He tilted his head towards the car and motioned for Roger to get in. Roger smiled. not politely, and under the incredulous eyes of Gwen and her mother, he stuffed the motorcycle behind him and disappeared. After walking to the front and saying hello to little Gwen, he got into the passenger seat. Little Lolita Gwen pulled her mother's hand with dull eyes. "Mommy, is he a magician? How come such a big motorcycle disappeared all of a sudden?" Probably. To be honest, I'm quite envious of your magic. You don't need to carry luggage when you go out." George, who was driving in the car, smiled. "Don't be envious. You don't know what I deal with every day. There are always some devils with strange abilities. Of course, the disappearance of the locomotive is not a superpower, but it is placed in the system space, but it is easier to explain it by pushing it on the devil. I envy you too, for having such a beautiful and lovely daughter." Roger pulled down the window and lit a cigarette at the same time. "Then you can find a woman you love and get married. Anyway, with your handsomeness, you won't have to worry about finding a woman." George smiled, took a cigarette handed over by Roger, lit it and started smoking. Being a policeman was stressful, so smoking was very common, and some of them were big smokers. Marriage is like a wall. People on the outside want to get in, but people on the inside want to get out. Or marriage is a tomb. I didn't expect you to be a philosopher. Ha 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 ha, you philosopher, I'm just a woman who sleeps too much. The two of them chatted like this while driving on the suburban road to their destination. Roger and George drove alternately and kept parking. At night, they stopped at a gas station to refuel and eat. "I have good news for you. Our destination is only about 2 hours away from here. If everything goes well, we won't have to sleep in the car at night." "This is good news. Let's hurry up and have a good sleep at night." After driving for more than 10 hours, even though I took turns sleeping in the car, I still didn't feel as comfortable as being down to earth. "There's someone in front of me," Roger said suddenly. "Where? Why didn't I see it?" George opened his eyes wide. There was no one on the dark road. Roger, who was sitting in the passenger seat, silently put his hands on the steering wheel. "Here we come, remember not to brake." I don't know when Roger's pupils began to change. They were no longer black pupils. In the dark eye sockets, the eyeballs had disappeared and were replaced by 2 yellow flames. When George was looking curiously at the empty space in front of him, a student carrying a bag suddenly appeared in the middle of the road. Because it appeared suddenly and was very close to the front of the car, everyone who drives knows that sometimes sudden accidents are caused by instinctive reactions faster than brain thinking. Fake. George opened his eyes wide, subconsciously stepped on the brakes, and then turned the steering wheel. But the steering wheel was firmly grasped by one hand and could not move at all. Finally, the car stopped on the side of the road with a long black brake mark. Ha! What happened just now? The frightened George broke into a cold sweat and looked around. There was a slope 3 or 4 meters to the left, and a mountain rock to the right. If Roger hadn't died just now, hold on to the steering wheel for dear life. Now they've been in a car accident. A car accident with a speed of more than per hour can lead to death or injury. George unbuckled his seat belt, got out of the car and looked behind him. There was no boy, no blood, only 2 blackened brake marks. After looking around for a while, I found nothing, so I had to get in the car with confusion. Here, Roger had already lit a cigarette and handed one to George. After George took it tremblingly, he took a deep breath and slowly calmed down. Although he and Roger had seen those gadgets a few times together, he was still a little afraid of these gadgets every time he encountered the poisonous scientific concepts. This concept could not be reversed. That boy just now, is that thing? That's the right answer, but there's no reward. Roger crossed his legs and hummed. He ran away. Why didn't you catch him? This is not like your style. George asked curiously. Hey, salvation is not my specialty, that is the priest's. What I am good at is sending them to see God. Roger said helplessly. The evil value in this boy is not strong at all. He may be a resentful spirit who died accidentally. Since this place is remote and there are no cars passing by at night, he can't find anyone if he wants to harm anyone. You can't just cut off an innocent soul when you encounter it. These wild things are all over the streets in big cities. Killing them not only doesn't gain any energy, but also takes a lot of effort. Can leeks be fried and eaten? Can weeds be eaten? These wandering souls are like weeds on the roadside. There are not too many in major cities. If it is said that it has killed countless people and has serious crimes, then we will be excited. After a conversation to no avail, George started the car and drove again, but this time he did not dare to drive too fast. The car drove for a while, and George finally couldn't help it anymore. I just saw that your eyes looked a bit like they were on fire. Want to see it again? I advise you not to see it, it will scare you to death. Those are not human eyes, and most of the people who see it are dead. Roger is telling the truth. The eye of judgment is either looking at it at will, or you don't activate its ability. Just looking at it a few times will make that person have nightmares for several days, dreaming of all the sins he has committed. If it is stimulated, it will be amazing. A pair of glances can directly ignite that person's soul and cause 100% death. But, we can't leave him alone. George, whose sense of justice was still at its peak, could not ignore that such an innocent soul could not rest in peace. Then when you get back, you can investigate who died on this road and what his name was. As long as you know his name, it will be easy to solve. Roger said nonchalantly. To save a wandering soul or an innocent soul, you must know its true name. Once you know its true name, even a pseudo-magician like yourself who doesn't have half a bucket of water can save them. That's it, I get it. George glanced at the road behind him again and made a note that he would call tomorrow to check who had died on this road. Here we are. A small town full of classical style and greenery appears in front of you. If you go on vacation or retire in this kind of place, it will definitely be very comfortable, with fresh air and beautiful mountains and waters. Although some people had turned off the lights and had a rest, the central street was still brightly lit, and some people were cheering and partying there. Roger and George drove the car to the door, turned off the engine and got out. They looked around and saw that it was a bar. Bars have been the favorites of all religions since ancient times, so this is the place to go if you want to get information. After entering the bar, colorful lights were shining in the middle of the stage, and some men and women were twisting their bodies crazily in the middle of the dance floor. Roger walked to the bar, each ordered a glass of wine and then began to inquire for information. Roger twitched his fingers at the bartender and took out a green tip worth 100. I want to ask about someone. She has been here for several days. Her name is Sally. Have you ever heard of this woman? The bartender held out 2 fingers, and Roger reluctantly took out another one. The boy at the bar's eyes lit up, and he pocketed the tip as fast as lightning. No, that's, the bar boy showed a row of white teeth and gestured toward the center of the stage. Roger, that's the most beautiful woman on stage. Looking at the tip in the other party's pocket, Roger felt that the money seemed a bit worthless. At this time, George also came over. Luo, guess what I just discovered? That's Sally, she is in the middle of the stage. Let's go and have a look. The two walked to the middle of the dance floor. George took out his police ID and motioned to the men dancing with her to go away. Hello, Sally, can you chat? George said. The young and beautiful woman was wearing heavy makeup and stretching her graceful figure. She closed her eyes and was immersed in the joy of music. After hearing George's voice, her face changed when she opened her eyes. Fake, it's the police again. How many times have I told you that if I don't go back, you can handle it how you want? If you bother me again, be careful and I will call a lawyer to sue you. After saying that, he stopped dancing and walked towards the bar. He lost interest in dancing after being disturbed by George and the others. Hey, beautiful lady, can we talk? Roger sat in front of Sally. Sally's eyes lit up. She didn't see the lighting problem in the middle of the stage clearly, but she didn't expect it to be a super handsome mixed-race guy. After swallowing, she flipped her hair charmingly and gave Roger a wink. You can talk about whatever you want. How about we go to my house to talk? My bed is big and comfortable. He didn't forget to stretch out his slender fingers and draw circles one after another in Roger's palm. You can talk about whatever you want. How about we go to my house to talk? My bed is big and comfortable. He didn't forget to stretch out his slender fingers and draw circles one after another in Roger's palm. When George saw this, he winked at Roger, which meant that all men understand that the beauty trap depends on you, and then he got up and left. Okay, but brother, I don't have much experience. Sister, you need to help give me some advice. Roger blinked and looked as if he was letting anyone pick. Seeing the handsome mixed-race guy like this, Sally became even more excited. She was so excited that she didn't care if he was a stranger or not, so she picked up Roger and walked outside. Be good, sister will love you very much. Let's go home. Sally hooked Roger's chin and giggled when she saw that Roger was a little shy. The two then walked out of the bar, arm in arm and arm in arm. The town is not very big, but Sally still has a car, which she drove from New York. After the two got in the car, they drove to her small town home, which was the house passed down from her grandfather. After entering the house, Sally couldn't wait to hug Roger into her arms, and then wanted to bite Roger with her mouth. Don't worry, let's take a shower anyway. You see, the smell of alcohol affects the mood. Roger blocked the other person's mouth with his hand. He really couldn't stand the smell of alcohol on the other person. Okay, it's up to you, sweetheart. Sally smiled charmingly, went to the bedroom to get a pajamas and walked to the bathroom, not forgetting to blow a kiss to Roger. Baby, please clean up a little. Things will be easier for you later. Roger blinked his left eye and fired an electric shock at the other party. Well, Sally, who was stunned by the electric shock, rushed into the bathroom at an unprecedented speed. Seeing the other party enter the bathroom, Roger smiled and took out his mobile phone to call George. George, I'm at number. After speaking, Roger hung up the phone, and a sweet and greasy voice came from the bathroom. Sweetheart, I forgot to bring my bath towel. Can you get it for me? Okay, but I can't find any other bath towels. I don't suggest that I use anything else instead. Roger took out a hemp rope from the cabinet and pulled it. It was quite strong. George drove to the house Roger mentioned. As soon as he got out of the car and wanted to knock on the door, Roger opened the door. You're here, why did it take you so long? It's been a long time since I finished. Is it done? George looked at Roger's lower body with a strange look. After walking into the house, I discovered that there was Sally wearing pajamas and tied up on the sofa in the house. She was staring at Roger with an extremely angry look. As if he could burn Roger to death with his anger, his eyes turned into knives and stabbed Roger hard. What are you? George asked in confusion. Tie her up to exorcise the devil. A mother who raised her child alone suddenly changes her temperament. She wants to have with a handsome guy when she sees him. It doesn't feel normal at first sight. Roger took the table salt he took out from the space and began to scatter it in the living room, drawing runes and patterns one by one. He was good at sending devils to heaven, but to exorcise them, he still had to use the tricks he stole from Za Kong. Okay, put her in the middle and I'll start chanting the spell. After George placed Sally among the runes, Roger began to mutter a spell. The candlelight at the scene began to flicker with Roger's words, and the salt painting circle began to slowly show a glimmer of light. God in charge of life and death. In the name of the Creator. Borrow the power of the gods. I will send you to hell here. Disperse quickly. Stay away from this place. Stay away from here, Roger yelled, startling George. Is this a failure? George asked curiously. Impossible. Stay away from this place, roared again. The surroundings were calm, nothing appeared, not even the candlelight on the side changed at all. It shouldn't be. Last time, even the demon King Fuxifa was able to drive away. Is there no evil in the other party at all? Roger stepped forward and sniffed Sally. There was indeed no smell of sin or sulfur. At first, I thought that the other party was hiding too deeply and I didn't smell it out, but I didn't expect that there was really no evil in the other party's body. Looking at Sally's angry eyes, Roger couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. She kindly wanted to put her on the bed, but he ended up tying her up. Can I never apologize to Sally without? Oh, Maga, George covered his face, then what should we do now? Aha, it doesn't matter. I have other ways. Just change the spell. I'll look at my notes first. Roger took out a small notebook with a few pages on it. I found it. This spell definitely works. It's a spell to find evil spirits, Roger said with great joy. Roger stepped forward, replaced the salt on the ground with a rune and pattern, and then started chanting the spell again. Dewey Tianlong, world-honored Saitagarba, Prajna Buddhas, Prajna Parmakong, bold monster, I want you to show your true colors and reveal yourself. After a while, there was still no change in the surroundings. George rolled his eyes and directly used his own interrogation methods to look for clues. It doesn't make sense. Is it because I have no faith? That's not right. Kong has no faith. He still drives these spells. Is there really no devil in Sally's body? Roger thought with a headache for a long time. Reasoning has never been his strong point. Although he has watched thousands of episodes of Death's Little Monk, the actual operation and what he learned from watching TV cannot be confused at all. George walked to the study and started to look for anything useful, but unexpectedly found a diary in the study. After looking at the name, it was left by Sally's deceased father. With many years of investigation experience, he felt that there must be some clues in the diary, so George opened the diary and began to read the contents page by page. The mighty heavenly dragon, the world-honored Saitagarbha, the Prajna Buddhas, the Prajna Parmakong, the demons are currently. Roger was still casting spells on Sally, thinking that if this didn't work, he would change to an Eastern one. Anyway, it was the same with Kong. Different countries used different spells alternately. The most genius thing about Kong is that magic from various faiths can be mixed together and used without any need to pay any faith. Why can't it work with him? Roger is extremely depressed. Roger, I think I found a clue. George ran out of the study with his diary and saw this scene. Well, don't get me wrong, I just want to try whether the Eastern spell can work. Luo, I think I found a clue. Come and take a look here. George handed over a diary. Roger took it curiously and opened it to look at. Today, Sally's mother went out to fool around again. Although I wanted to divorce her before, but now. Roger read this and looked at George with a question mark on his face. Open the penultimate diary entry. George said helplessly. I held back and finally controlled myself. The magic mirror is scarier than the D-grade mirror. It's addictive. Because it can fulfill any wish. Ever since Sally's mother became a different person, I have never entered the magic mirror again. I feel that the magic mirror has swallowed up Sally's mother's feelings. She has lost her love for her children and me. February number 15. Sally's mother and I officially divorced, and then I went to the big city to find her happiness. I also took the magic mirror back to my grandfather's house in the country, and I sealed the magic mirror in the cellar. To prevent it from appearing, in order to control my own desires, I poured several trucks of cement into the cellar. Sally, my daughter, after I die, you must remember to destroy that mirror. It is not a magic mirror that can grant wishes, but a demon that devours desires. Roger understood. How could a single mother who was not well off be curious enough to look in the mirror after reading such a diary? According to the records in the diary, any wish can be realized in the magic mirror, but it can only be realized in the world in the mirror and cannot appear in the real world. George said solemnly, yes, but if you enter it for a long time, something will be swallowed by the magic mirror, causing a person's temperament to change drastically. Roger touched his chin and asked curiously, have you ever thought about a question, why does Sally still go out to have fun? Instead of staying in the magic mirror. Ask Sally herself. Roger pulled the towel from her mouth. Miss Sally, tell me, why don't you stay in the magic mirror that makes all wishes come true? Sally, on the other hand, sneered and stared at Roger without saying a word. Aha, the moon is really good today. The worst I can do is suffer some losses, and how about paying for your mental loss? Roger said with a laugh. How about if you don't force it, just tell me where the magic mirror is and let George stay with you for a night. He is in great health and his kidney function is this. Roger gave a thumbs up. George on the side couldn't stand it anymore. Roger, don't drag me into this. I will not betray my wife and daughter. Haha, it's just a joke. I see the atmosphere is so tense. Let's make a joke to liven things up. Okay, I probably know the situation. Now I'm looking for the magic mirror hidden by her. Roger took out the salt, drew a symbol on the ground, then took out a small stove, and then began to murmur to himself in a low voice. Holy Mother Earth, Mother of the upper realm, please guide me. Reveal the demon hiding here. There was no dove release this time, and the smoke from the small stove began to slowly fly outside. Roger quickly picked up the stove and ran out. When he came outside, he didn't float to the cellar aside. Instead, he flew to a big tree and kept entangled in it. Found it, she buried it here. Roger said. Here, George handed over a shovel, which he took from the cellar. It seems she was very lazy. She didn't clean it up well after burying it. She even threw away the shovel. Roger picked up the shovel and started digging with George. After a while, there was a click and something was shoveled. You won't break the mirror, will you? George suddenly remembered an important question. Ah, probably not. Magic mirrors can't be broken that easily. He quickly squatted down and started digging the soil with his hands. Fortunately, the mirror was facing up and was not broken by the two shovels. Wow, that's a beautiful mirror. Roger smiled. A mirror 1.8 meters long and centimeters wide appeared in front of the two of them, as if to allow the people inside to come out. When the two of them cleaned the mirror and carried it into the house, Sally appeared extremely uneasy. By the way, how do you activate this mirror? Is there a corresponding spell in the diary? Roger asked. George took out the diary again and looked through it carefully, but still couldn't find any spells or hints. No, I don't see any spells or prompts on it. No. Roger touched his chin and circled around the mirror. A very common mirror is made of black wood. It is very beautiful. However, if you look closely, you will find that the patterns seem to be carved with tiny runes. In ancient Egyptian magic, mirrors are often the door to other spiritual worlds. Perhaps, there is no spell at all and no need, right, Sally? Roger looked at Sally with a smile. The other party was looking at Roger with a horrified expression, as if Roger had guessed something. Face her to the mirror and maybe we can find out. Ah, no, you can't do this to me, please, keep me away from that mirror. Sally looked at the mirror in fear. George and Roger looked at each other, funny. When they turned the mirror over to face Sally, a horrifying scene appeared in front of their eyes. In the mirror, there was no figure of Sally. There were only two people inside, George and Roger, and Sally couldn't see them at all. Sally, no shadow. Gulu, George couldn't help but swallowed his saliva. What is the concept of a living person who can't see his shadow in the mirror? Realistic version of Thriller. George's legs were trembling, and his hand was unnaturally touching the holster. Only a gun could bring him a sense of security. And that unreliable Roger subconsciously took a step towards Roger. Hey, I found out the secret, look George. George turned his head and saw Roger's fingers tapping the mirror again and again. There were ripples on the surface of the mirror, and the ripples spread slowly and stopped suddenly. I understand, as long as you look at this mirror for a period of time, you can enter the mirror world without any spells at all. Roger said excitedly, because he could already put half of his finger in. Wait a minute, are you going to go in like this? Aren't you afraid of any danger? Let's study it some more before we decide. George quickly advised. Hey, it's danger that scares me. I have many devils protecting me, so all evil will not invade. Roger reached into his pocket, dug through it, and threw a small bag of something to George. What is this? George asked. Mandrake roots, the thing evil spirits hate most. After hearing what Roger said, George picked it up, opened it, looked at it, and smelled it. To devils, this stuff is as smelly as human feces. They won't dare to come close to you if you smell it. George, I'm going in. You should be more careful. I'll give you this bottle of water. Don't look at it as dirty as urine. This is the holy water from the church. It's very useful against evil spirits and the like. Roger handed it over again. George, a bottle of water. Be careful. Roger waved his hand, saying that he didn't have to worry about it, and then slowly stretched his hand in, and then walked into the mirror. As Roger entered, Sally slowly sneered. Why are you laughing? Is there any danger in the mirror? George asked in a deep voice. At this time, Sally was no longer silent and sneered. Once he goes in, he won't be able to come out. As long as a person is reluctant to come out, you won't understand. Then why did you come out? George was keenly aware of the problem in her words. But Sally kept silent and just kept sneering. There were cars and horses everywhere, and there were skyscrapers everywhere. When Roger came in, he discovered that New York was inside. What's the situation? No, this is Hollywood, because I have been there, just because I was depressed that time, and in order to make myself feel better, I went there to admire all kinds of beauties every day. Honey, dear, why are you here? A pair of catkins hugged Roger's arms directly. Luo is mine. Get out of here, bitcha. Another beauty snatched Roger's whole body away and pressed his head on her conscience. Ah, you guys, don't move. Luo is mine. Another beautiful woman ran over. Roger looked around in confusion. All the famous beauties in Hollywood were here, competing for him. Is this a dream or in heaven? Snapped. Roger slapped himself hard. It hurts so much, it's not a dream. Honey, why did you hit yourself? You're all red. Let me blow it for you, ah. A popular actress in her late 20s walked up to her and kissed her. Hey, Luo is mine, you are not allowed to kiss secretly, ah. Roger. Soon, a large group of yin-yang yan-yan surrounded him here, and then rushed to kiss him. Some of them even sweated and took off their coats in front of the public. Roger was shocked. Hey, if you go too far, you will be reported if readers see it. Bah, bold monster, I can tell at a glance that you are not human, and you are still unrevealed. Great power. Bah, 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 brainwashed, mispronounced. Roger slapped his mouth and hurriedly changed the spell. 5 elements of the world. I sincerely call you. Origin from 6 directions. Settlement here. Reveal the truth. Reveal true body. Reveal your true identity. Roger roared angrily, his eyes glowing red. As Roger chanted the incantation to the end, an invisible wind blew by, and the orioles and swallows that were dancing around him a second ago turned into smoke and disappeared. I wiped away the non-existent sweat. Being handsome these days means being miserable. It doesn't matter if you are harassed outside. When you come to the fantasy world, you will also be harassed by many beauties. Walking slowly on the street, everything here is no different from the real world except that it is lifeless. There were bugs, birds, and people coming and going. Roger bent down to the water dragon and touched the water. It turned out to be real. The only difference is that the people and animals here lack a kind of vitality, the spirit of living, or they have no soul. Roger stood on the street and looked at the crowd around him. The eyeballs in his eyes had long since disappeared, replaced by 2 small balls of flame. Eye of Judgment. This is the ultimate trump card of the Ghost Rider, and it can also see through any delusion. Under the gaze of the Eye of Judgment, no one on the street has a soul, not a single one. Looking back, the scene before me seemed familiar. When I was wandering around in Hollywood, I saw a playboy on the news, surrounded by a lot of beautiful women. Just thinking about how great it would be if so many beauties could surround me. So, what is said in the diary is true. Realizing people's dreams, Roger touched his chin. Stretching out his hand to the side, he concentrated his mind and said silently, "Here comes a plane." A burst of green smoke blew by, and a plane was quickly constructed out of thin air. Wochi. Roger opened his eyes wide and tried hard to see the illusion inside with his eyes of judgment, but no matter how he looked at it, the plane was real. Get on the plane and fly it into the sky. Come on, give me a rain of candy for my buddy. Immediately, it began to rain heavily, and what dropped was not water, but candies. People on the ground looked up at the sky in disbelief. For another one, just put down a dollar bill. The sky was replaced by pieces of green banknotes, flying non-stop. People on the ground happily stepped forward to pick up the banknotes. Alas, I finally fulfilled a dream. But we have to get down to business. I don't have any talent, so I'll just show you, Mr. Reader, how to roll a nuclear warhead with my hands. Roger licked his lips, held his hands together and rubbed them. After a while, a huge nuclear warhead appeared. He threw it on the ground and set the detonation time. Then he drove the plane like this and flew directly outside. He wanted to see how big this fictional world was. Soon he felt something was wrong, because as he flew over, the whole city was moving with him. It was a city about 10 kilometers away. If he moved forward, the place behind would be instantly wiped out, and then reorganized in front. These were all scenes he had seen. I understand, what if it's a place I haven't seen before? Roger slowly flew in another direction, to the seaside, a place he had never been to before. When he arrived, he only saw a colorful barrier, or in other words, a wall. Now I completely understand that this dreamlike world was created based on my own memory. Slowly closing his eyes, and then forcefully opening them, the flames of God filled the entire plain. Ghost Rider, also known as the Wrath of God, is said to be a watcher sent by God to monitor the world after the Great Flood. This watcher will avenge all those who have been harmed, and can be said to punish evil. But for some unknown reason, he was deceived by Mephisto and became his #1 thug. The moment it was possessed by flames, the plane turned into a magically shaped armed helicopter. Roger licked his lower lip, pressed the button, enchanted the Stinger missile, and flew directly over to blow up the barrier. Then it flew through the hole and came to another place. Later, the nuclear warhead he set also began to explode hugely. What he didn't know was that after he left, the original world began to condense into a figure, and that figure was Roger himself. PFF'd. Roger almost spit out his words when he came to another space in the mirror world. You really know how to play, no wonder. A huge pyramid was erected in the middle of New York. At the top was an extremely beautiful woman, dressed in noble and gorgeous clothes. Countless men were kneeling around her, praying, and each of these men looked very familiar. There were countless people at their feet, and various robot guards acted as soldiers to guard the surroundings. Wozhuang, isn't this Tom Cruise? Oh, that's Arnold. Is this playing Cleopatra? Roger clicked his tongue and counted carefully. Not only were there a bunch of macho guards around him, but there were also many weird gadgets. There are Terminator robots, Brother Long from First Blood, Superman and Batman. It seems that Sally is not only a groupie, but also a film and television enthusiast. Roger jumped out of the helicopter and landed in front of her. After seeing Roger, a group of people quickly shouted to protect him. The Terminator immediately stood in front of their queen, while others stepped forward to surround Roger. Sally, are you Sally? Roger asked. You have the audacity to call Her Majesty the Queen by her first name. All the strong men were so angry that they wanted to turn Roger into ashes immediately. Roger was stared at and his scalp was numb. The control of this world is obviously in Sally's hands, and she doesn't know how powerful these characters she created are. There is no need to waste it. Otherwise, the macho man wearing red underwear alone would be enough for him to eat a pot. Stop, who are you and how do you know my name? Sally looked like Cleopatra's arrogant look, reaching out to stop the attacks of the strong men around her. Sally, do you remember your son? That boy Tom who liked Ultraman? When Sally heard this, she fell into a daze, as if she was thinking about something. When Roger saw this, he directly took out a limited edition Ultraman. This was the reward given by that little brat Tom that day. As long as the mission was completed, it could be exchanged for game gold coins, so Roger took it from him in advance. As this, Tom's baby, Sally, who was lost in memories, slowly regained consciousness, as if she remembered something. After taking Ultraman, she slowly remembered something. Mommy, can you buy this limited edition for me? Baby, I'm sorry, Mom has no money and can't afford it. Forget it, Mommy, let's buy it when we have money. In the end, looking at the expectant look in his son's eyes, I gritted my teeth and bought him this limited edition Ultraman figure for his birthday. She still remembers that her son was extremely happy the day he got it. If anything unhappy happens from now on, her son will comfort her and tell her to believe in the light and things will get better. Oh, I actually forgot about my child, just to enjoy myself in this world. Sally covered her mouth, tears slowly flowing down. Sorry everyone, I have to go back to New York. My children are waiting for me. At this moment, the strong men around him, including Batman, Superman in red underpants, and the Terminator, all knelt down. Queen, are you leaving us? I'm sorry, my son needs me. Sally sobbed slowly with red eyes. Because she knows that these are virtual characters she created. Once she leaves, they will disappear, as if the world does not exist. How could we not have feelings after being together for so long? She was the creator of this world, and she had the final say whether it was time or life. Woo, Queen, do not abandon your people. Your Majesty, if you leave, the world will be destroyed. I'm sorry, but my son really needs me. Sally looked up at Roger with red eyes, slowly becoming more and more determined. Let's go back, Tom should be worried. Okay, I'll take you away now. Roger breathed a sigh of relief. In this weird mirror world, it's best if nothing happens. God knows what will happen. I'm sorry, but I can't let you take Her Majesty away. In an instant, a man wearing red underwear stood in front of Roger, with a cold face and a pair of cold eyes staring at Roger mercilessly. You dare to disobey my orders, don't forget that I created you. Sally was angry and annoyed. She didn't understand how a virtual character dared to disobey her orders. Yes, you gave me life and made me no longer a cartoon character, but you also gave me a sense of mission and responsibility. Superman slowly turned his head to look at Sally. For you, we may be just an idea, but for us, this world is the real existence. Superman's protection of the world has penetrated into his bones. This is a mission more important than his life. You can kill me afterwards, and I have no complaints, but I will never let you leave and cause the destruction of this world. When Roger saw this, he took a deep breath. The unexpected change he least expected to encounter happened. These virtual characters actually knew about you, me and him, and what kind of existence they were. Are you surprised? Not long after we were born, we probably understood why our wisdom and strength are so powerful, but we can't get out of this world. A figure with black pointed ears walked up. It was Batman. Roger looked at him quietly and asked, "Is it your fault that Sally lost her memory of her son?" Batman squinted his eyes and said, "That's right, because every time she leaves this world, it will lead to the destruction here. When the world restarts, I discovered the last message I left. After deciphering it, I came up with a terrifying conclusion. Our creator is our queen. She is a god who lives in another world. Once she leaves or dies, the energy source of this world will disappear, and the entire world will disappear and return to darkness. So, after discussing with Clark and others, we all decided to let the queen, our god, forget some memories and let her stay in this world forever. You can't do this. Tom is still waiting for me. I can't leave my child." Sally yelled angrily. "I'm sorry, Queen, our god. Your only mistake is that when you created us, you shouldn't have restored our thoughts exactly the same." It was still Batman who said this. His light tone was really off-putting. "You can go back to your world, but it is impossible to take away our god. For this world, for this planet, I will not hesitate to sacrifice myself," Clark said to Roger in a deep voice. Roger looked at Sally and then at the macho man wearing red underwear. He was a little panicked. A cold voice interrupted. "We can't let him go, otherwise there will be big trouble. Clark, he must die here." Chapter 11. Roger turned around and saw a girl wearing an ancient Greek battle dress, Diana. Wonder Woman is carrying a shield and holding the god-killing sword, pointing at Roger. After he goes back, he doesn't know if he will bring more powerful helpers back to take Sally away. We can't take risks. Clark, think about this world. It has grown from a small piece of land of less than 10 square kilometers at the beginning to a real world now. The nature and animals on it, and every life on it, will be in danger because of your kindness." Quote. A red figure appeared on the scene with flashing arcs all over his body. I'm sorry, we can't let you leave, but if you are willing to stay, we can coexist peacefully, and the world is not bad. The pizza is delicious. Do you want a piece?" The person speaking was Barry the Flash, who still looked like a boy next door who was 16 or 17 years old. "I'm afraid there are other reasons for not letting me leave. For example, as you just said, Sally is the source of energy in this world. Similar to the sun, it has expanded the entire world from more than 10 square kilometers to now boundless. If there was one more me, it might become a bigger world, right?" Roger looked at Batman with a smile. Quote. After a while, Batman said in a deep voice, "You are very smart. With one more god, the whole world will evolve better. This is the result of my calculations. Then it looks like we're still going to fight. Unfortunately, what I'm best at is not exorcising demons, but sending them to see God." Roger's hands began to emit black smoke, and his body slowly turned red. Flames began to appear in some cracked skin. At this moment, an unexpected person took the lead in launching an attack. He raised his shotgun and struck Batman with a blow. The dense small steel balls directly covered the entire small space, but Superman moved very quickly. Before the bullet was about to hit, he had already stood in front of Batman and stopped all the bullets. "T-800, why did you betray us?" Superman asked in a deep voice. "My program has only served the Queen since it was created. Her intention is my life," Arnold said coolly while wearing sunglasses. "Forgot that you are a robot. You have no human emotions," Batman said through gritted teeth, then turned to look at the other robots. "You actually betrayed me, so needless to say the other robots." Just as Batman finished speaking, a disguised silver liquid robot suddenly jumped up on the ground. It's the T-1000, which turns its hand into a spike and targets Batman's chin. Unfortunately, there was the most powerful man in red underwear ever created beside him. Superman stretched out a hand, directly blocked the T-1000 spikes, and smashed it into pieces with a casual blow. At this time, another liquid metal man, TX, hiding in the crowd in the distance, fired the ion cannon in his hand, directly hitting Batman. Since the ion cannon fired at the speed of light, it also shot an eye behind Superman's head. The blind spot prevented Superman from reacting. But someone still stopped him. At the critical moment, Barry pulled Batman away. The ion cannon was scratched, and Batman was seriously injured and dying. "Bruce," Superman roared. His good friend's injury made him furious. His eyes were red, and he glanced directly at all the robots on the scene. According to calculations, Batman is the mastermind of the Justice League, and his victory will increase by 50.00% if he is eliminated. Prioritize the elimination of Batman. Prioritize killing Batman. The sound of robots was heard everywhere, and Sally covered her mouth in disbelief. At that time, she just created these robots in the movie according to her own ideas, but she didn't expect that today he would be the important person to save her. All robots in Skynet have no emotions, and take your wishes as the final command. Please go first, and Arnold will stop you. Arnold wore sunglasses and said to Sally calmly. All of a sudden, the scene was in chaos. The pyramids built by Sally used Skynet's robots as slaves, resulting in the robots being many times the size of those movie and TV characters. Now Skynet's robots attack other virtual heroes based on Sally's thoughts. The scene suddenly turned into a big fight. Let's leave quickly. Roger pulled Sally over and pulled her onto the motorcycle he took out from the space. Boom. Roger turned the throttle to the maximum and drove the motorcycle into the air. At the same time, the entire motorcycle began to be enchanted and transformed into a will-o'-the-wisp motorcycle. No one of you can run away. Barry, stop them. Superman wanted to go over, but Skynet didn't know when a bunch of robots appeared, all attacking Batman. Superman, who was worried about his friend's life, could not walk away for a while, so he could only call another super fast person for help. I'm sorry, I have to stop you from leaving this world. Barry activated the Speed Force, blue lightning arcs accompanied his whole body, he ran in front of Roger at an extremely fast speed, and then pushed his car. When Barry touched Roger's motorcycle, a string of flames climbed directly up his hand. Barry didn't care at first. With his speed, he waved his hand and extinguished the flames. Who knew? Ah, there's something wrong with this fire, there's something wrong with this fire. Barry screamed and rolled over, and after a while, he turned into ashes. After pushing Roger's car, Barry discovered that the flames on the motorcycle were not ordinary flames at all. They burned directly into the depths of his body and soul and could not be extinguished even if he took off his uniform. I'm sorry. Although I also like Barry, you are not really him after all. Roger fixed the car again and motioned for Sally to sit still. The fire of evil spirits is the wrath from God, processed by the demon king Mephisto, and it is not something they can fight against, because they are just people constructed from an idea in Sally's soul and memory. The flame that specifically restrains the soul happens to be the nemesis among their nemesis. No matter how powerful they are shaped by Sally, the soul is always a weakness, not even 1/10,000th of Sally's. Clark, leave me alone and catch them quickly. Be careful of that person's flames. But, my life is more important than the life of this world. Understood. Clark took a deep breath and blew out a hurricane, blowing away most of the robots around him. Go, Clark, I'll protect Bruce. Wonder Woman jumped in front of Bruce. Superman nodded and instantly flew up, turning on his super speed and flying towards Sally. Along the way, God killed God and Buddha blocked Buddha. Both Arnold and the liquid robot were shattered by Superman's punch and turned into scrap metal. Quickly, think of a way, this is your world. Roger yelled at Sally. What can I do? I'm just an ordinary person, and I can't destroy them now. Sally turned around anxiously. Stupid, you are the creator of this world, the creator. Stupid, you are the creator of this world, the creator. Creation. Idiot, kryptonite, make a bunch of kryptonite. Roger felt like he hated iron, this woman is so stupid. Not only did he create a bunch of superheroes, but he also gave them the same characters as in the comics. What's even more outrageous is that he couldn't control them. And now we can't even destroy them. But it's also possible that Bruce did something to prevent Sally from making them disappear with just a thought. When you are indecisive or unable to figure things out, you can definitely turn to Batman. Oh, I'm wrong, a group of robots are quite loyal. Yes, kryptonite. Sally closed her eyes, and a lot of green glowing kryptonite appeared out of thin air around her. Kryptonite. Superman's expression changed. He knew his weaknesses better than anyone else. Don't try to stop me. Superman's eyes glowed red, and his heat vision remotely attacked, directly destroying all the kryptonite, but he did not dare to approach them. At the same time, because Sally and Roger were too close, they were afraid to launch long-range attacks. After all, if Sally died, the world might be destroyed. Suddenly, after an earthquake and the mountains shook, a huge figure blocked the exit. No matter how good Roger's racing skills were, he could not get around it. Roar! The giant beast roared at the two of them, and turned into a hurricane and blew them to the ground. I'm going to kill you. Why did you create a Godzilla for nothing? Roger opened his eyes wide and looked up at this small mountain-like giant beast with a look of surprise on his face. My son likes Ultraman, so I was curious and made one. Sally blushed and said nonchalantly. Hey, wait, what did you just say? The previous sentence. As if remembering something, Sally and Roger looked at each other and looked at the limited edition Tiga figure in her hand. Ultraman. Sally didn't need to be reminded this time. She directly raised the figure and shouted loudly, I believe in light, come out, Tiga. The Tiga figure in his hand emitted a dazzling light, and a giant of light with a height of 120 meters and a weight of more than 4 tons appeared in front of him. Slowly, the light recedes. After Tiga appeared, he nodded towards Roger and Sally, then rushed directly towards Godzilla, knocking it to the ground with a collision. Then he jumped up and hit Godzilla with a blast, leaving Godzilla unable to fight back. Seeing that no one could stop Sally and Roger from escaping the cave, Superman's eyes showed despair. Finally gritted his teeth and made a firm decision in his eyes. Just when Sally stepped into the space-time door where Roger came from, a burst of extremely dazzling light appeared. The light was comparable to the sun, making it impossible to look directly at him. A Superman of light appeared on the scene with a cape on his back and an S painted on his chest. Wait a minute, Sally, can you listen to me for a few words? Just a few words, please. Superman of light slowly flew in front of Sally and Roger. At this time, he was no longer restrained by kryptonite. Because he has burned his life, using the power of life to resist the influence of kryptonite. Sally, who had half her foot on the space-time door, could leave in just one step. She looked at Roger hesitantly, and he nodded. You say it. The Superman of light smiled and nodded towards Roger to express his gratitude, and then said to Sally. You created me and gave me the same personality and abilities as in the comics, so I am the first person in this world to begin to awaken to myself. My super brain can figure out many things. When I learned that I was just a fictional comic character, I was confused and painful for a while, but slowly afterwards. I discovered that the nature, bugs, and animals here are becoming more and more real. From an appearance at the beginning, to the end, the internal organs and even blood appeared. All this made me very happy. Watching some small animals being preyed upon by other animals made me sad. But watching new animals being born, I shed tears of happiness. Slowly, I no longer care whether I exist or not, nor whether I am a fictional Superman. I just want to protect the world and watch it grow. Quote. The Superman of light slowly stretched out his hand expectantly, and all this is because of you. You are the creator of this world. Your strong feelings and love make this world start to evolve itself, making it more and more real. As long as you leave, countless lives here, the nature and animals I love will all be wiped out. Stay, okay, our God, Creator. Quote, I'm sorry, I can't give up my son, he needs me, and I love him, just as you love this world. Sally couldn't stop her tears from flowing down, covering her mouth with her hands as she kept apologizing. I don't understand. He is your child, aren't we? Are you going to abandon thousands of children just for him? Superman of light looked at Sally with a look of despair. Roger reached out to catch Sally's tears and handed them to the Superman of light. These are the tears of a mother. The Superman of light stretched out his hands and slowly took the tear. Slowly, colorful lights emitted from Superman's hands like a rainbow. After a while, the rainbow-like light penetrated directly into Superman's body, and the light Superman turned into the rainbow Superman. I understand. Is this love? This is true love. Superman smiled bitterly. Our feelings are incomparable to true love. Superman's light began to weaken, and cracks began to appear in his body. It was obvious that his burning life was counting down. Let's go, Sally. Remember to tell your child Tom that Superman is also a giant of light, no worse than Tiga, haha. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Sally covered her mouth with red eyes, crying non-stop, and then resolutely stepped out with the other foot. In the distance, Godzilla is still being blocked by Tiga. The two mountain-like giants are fighting. A single blow can blow up a skyscraper. Wonder Woman, on the other hand, was fiercely slashing at Skynet's robots, one by one. Bruce, who was lying on the ground, didn't know whether he was alive or dead. Streams of dust, or smoke, began to spread from the farthest distance when Sally took the last step, and all the high-rise buildings began to disappear. A hurricane blew past, and the buildings, plants, animals, sky and earth, including the sun, all turned into nothingness, leaving only a vast white space, as if everything did not exist. Until finally, the Superman of light standing at the door of time and space began to turn into a puff of smoke from head to toe. Sally couldn't bear to look any further, so she closed her tearful eyes and leaned into Roger's arms. Oh, let's go back. Roger patted Sally on the shoulder, but she just closed her eyes and cried silently. What the two of them didn't know was that after they left, there was a small smear of black ashes in the white space. This was the ashes that burned Barry to death, and there was still a little spark of Roger's evil fire on it. And where Superman died, there was still a small drop of colorful things. It was the tear that the Superman of light held in his hand just now, Sally's tear. What kind of world is inside, and why hasn't Luo come out after so long? George's eyes were red and he kept smoking one cigarette after another. It had been a few hours since Roger went into the mirror, and he couldn't help but feel a little worried. Sally, the insider, said nothing. You can go in and have a look. It's a paradise inside. I guarantee you won't forget it after you go in. Sally sneered. Then why do you still come out? Every time he asked this question, Sally just kept silent, which made George feel itchy. This kind of guessing game was too difficult. Why did you not want your child? You have to know that as a single mother, you have taken care of him alone for so many years, so your relationship must be very deep. I guessed it right, George began to ask tentatively. But after you got the mirror left by your father from the diary, everything changed. It seemed that you completely lost your feelings for your son. In the diary, it is written that the mirror is a magical mirror that can realize all wishes, and it is also a demon that devours desires. Let me make a guess. That is, you got something in the mirror and exchanged it for something else, and this thing might be your family affection, right? As George reasoned step by step, Sally's expression began to change, but she still refused to say a word. George's eyes lit up, and he seemed to have guessed correctly. Many years of police career have given him a good way of observing words and expressions. Every time he speaks a sentence, he can judge the other person's face and induce inferences about the plot. George lit up a cigarette again and took a long drag. He decided that if Roger didn't come out in another hour, he would go in and take a look in the mirror. At this time, two figures appeared in the mirror, and after a while, they rushed out of the mirror. George quickly took out his gun and pointed it at the two of them, while holding the holy water given by Roger in one hand. Don't shoot in a hurry, it's us. Roger said hurriedly. If it were later, George would feed him peanuts and the whole book would be funny. Luo, you're back, is this, Sally? George opened his eyes wide and looked, yes it was her. Then he rubbed his eyes and looked to the other side. It was still Sally. Why were there two more people? What's going on? There are two Sally. Roger shrugged at George. Don't look at me, I don't quite understand either, and both of them are real. A small flame appeared in Roger's pupils, and he looked at the two of them. They were both human beings, and there were no traces of those evil spirits. Now it's become a real and fake Sun Wukong. Which one of you is the real one? I'm very curious. Sally, who was tied to the ground, looked extremely ugly and looked at Roger with a vicious look. This nosy handsome guy had ruined everything for her. We are all real, said Sally as she appeared in the mirror. It started when I got my father's diary. After I learned about the magic mirror, I initially thought about destroying it according to my father's last wish, but my growing curiosity eventually made me unable to help but give it a try. As a result, I entered the mirror world for the first time and found that any wish can be realized in it. I got a lot of gold, hoping that it would make my and my children's lives less difficult in the future. As a result, I found that if anything was taken out of the mirror, it would be destroyed and turned into nothingness. However, I was not willing to keep the treasure in vain, so I tried my best to think of various ways. Quote. When Sally said this, she looked at Sally on the ground sadly. Later I discovered that I was God in the mirror world, and everything in it was real, as long as I had a thought, including food, so I came up with an idea: could I create a real Earth, and then bring my son over live here? As a result, Sally became more and more curious about what could be achieved in the mirror world. Superman, Batman, Godzilla, everything that only existed in their movies and TV shows was created by him one by one. The longer she stayed, the less she wanted to leave. When she walked into the real world, she had the illusion that the real world was illusory and that the inside was real. Roger later found out that after Batman awakened, he tricked Sally, the creator, and made her forget her child and remain obsessed with the magic mirror. What about her? Who is she? Roger pointed to the other Sally on the ground. She is my other personality, just like my mother, Sally explained sadly. After my father and mother discovered the magic mirror left by my great-grandfather, they also began to study its abilities. In the end, my mother's temperament changed drastically, and she divorced my father. If you stay in the magic mirror for a long time, another personality will appear, which is a negative combination of yourself. The longer you stay in the magic mirror, the more real the secondary personality will be, and in the end you will become a real person and walk out of the mirror. Quote. After saying that, Sally took out another diary. This was her mother's diary. Wait a minute, I have a question. Roger suddenly thought of something. That means your mother is still somewhere in the mirror world. Didn't you see her when you went in? Sally shook her head sadly. I don't know. I just entered the magic mirror and wanted to look for her, but I couldn't find her. Maybe she has died in the magic mirror. Maybe not dead, but completely turned into a shadow in the mirror, just like she changed from the person in the mirror to a real person, so you can't find her. Roger pointed to Sally on the ground. Look at her shadow. At this moment, Sally's shadow on the ground became lighter and lighter, as if she was surrounded by shadowless lights. The careful Roger discovered that when he first came out, Sally's shadow was very light, but now it is getting darker and darker. Maybe if Roger had rescued her a few days later, she would have completely disappeared from the mirror world. It's all you, it's all you. If you don't come out, nothing will happen. Mirror Sally looked at Sally and the others viciously. If you don't come, nothing will happen. I curse you all to have a bad death. Now I'm going to die, I'm going to die. I'm going to die not long after I finally come to this real world and enjoy it. Mirror image Sally, at first, kept swearing. Slowly, the voice became smaller and smaller, and finally started to cry. There was great fear between life and death, and it was obvious that the other person was no different from a human being. I'm sorry, it's all my fault, my selfishness, my greed. I'm sorry for you, I'm sorry for Tom, I failed Superman, and I'm sorry for you. You are the second personality that emerged out of all my dissatisfaction with reality, greed and desire for desire. I'm sorry. Sally had red eyes and shed tears. She slowly walked over and hugged the mirror image Sally. A surprising scene appeared. The mirror image of Sally slowly turned transparent and turned into a transparent white light. The mirror image of Sally in the white light slowly put away her vicious expression, showed a relieved smile, and finally merged with her. It's daybreak. The birds began to chirp and look for insects to eat, and the plants stretched their bodies to welcome the first light of hope in the morning. When a ray of golden sunlight shone into the room, George realized that he had not slept all night. I couldn't help but yawned and stretched. Staring at the two panda eyes, the eyeballs were covered with bloodshot eyes, looking like. George, you look like a panda who played games all night long. Roger couldn't help but make a joke. Really, I don't care about this. I just care about whether my 2 police officers are also exchanged in the magic mirror like Sally. George said helplessly. It's possible that I was in the magic mirror at the time, and there was another Sally outside. Her actions may have made your 2 guys suspicious. Or maybe they saw me entering the magic mirror or my father's diary, and then discovered the magic mirror. Sally hesitated for a moment and continued, there is something magical about the magic mirror. It is as addictive as D0. Once you go in it once, you will never be able to lose its temptation. After speaking, Sally couldn't help but look at Roger curiously, because she really didn't understand how Roger resisted the temptation of the magic mirror. In a real world, you are the creator with a wave of your hand, and you can get whatever you want. Ha ha ha, I'm kidding, I can tell at a glance that those monsters are not human beings. Roger laughed, but his heart was bleeding. If he wasn't afraid of river crabs, he would have experienced the 3 palaces and 6th courtyard. George, you go and rest first. I'll go out and find out what's going on with your 2 guys, and then we'll discuss it in the afternoon. After speaking, Roger turned to Sally and said, you should also take a rest. I think your mental state is not very good. What about you? Don't you need to rest? Sally asked. Haha, I don't have to. I'm an exorcist. It's okay to go without sleep for a few days. Of course what Roger said is not the truth, but it's okay to go without sleep for a day or 2. After all, the Ghost Rider is a creature of the night. After a person left the house, Roger began to inquire for information. These days, it is difficult to find a criminal, but it is too easy to find 2 policemen, especially 2 policemen from out of town. Soon, Roger found a big fat man in patrol uniform who was buying breakfast at a breakfast shop. Drinking high-calorie milk tea so early in the morning, no wonder I'm so fat. Roger muttered. When I walked up to the front desk of the breakfast shop, it was just the same old thing. Hello, please give me the same package as this gentleman, and at the same time, his account will be settled on me. The fat man turned his head and looked at Roger suspiciously. It was rare for a police officer to have breakfast with him. They were either acquaintances or people who wanted to bribe him. Good morning, officer, can you sit down and chat? I'm from New York, looking for 2 guys in the same uniform as you. Roger extended his hand in a friendly manner. After hearing Roger's words, the fat man suddenly understood and reached out his hand to shake Roger's hand. You are a colleague of the 2 of them, right? You guys from New York made several calls to inquire about the situation. To be honest, we don't understand what's wrong with them. After taking the 2 breakfasts handed over by the waiter, the 2 found a corner to sit down and started chatting about George's 2 guys. My name is McPherson, Roger. Seeing that no one around him was looking, Roger took out a cigarette and handed it over with 2 green banknotes in his hand. The fat man's eyes lit up when he saw it. It was Franklin with the highest denomination. The fat man took Roger's cigarette with lightning speed, then hooked his hand, and the green banknotes disappeared directly into his hand. You want to ask about your 2 policemen, right? That's right, they were originally here to investigate a case, but for some reason, they suddenly stopped going back, and then called to resign. You know, the police are a special profession. Such a strange thing, the New York Police. The Bureau has to be curious. Fatty McPherson took a sip of hot milk tea before stopping and continuing. I know what you're saying. This matter starts from your side. First, a woman named Sally disappeared. Later, we couldn't find it here. New York thought she was dead or missing, so they sent people come and take a look. Originally, cross-border cases like this were handled by other departments. You know, there are as many departments in this country as there are stars in the sky. She suddenly appeared again later and refused to go back. She was a single mother with a child at home, so the police station in New York felt something was abnormal and sent someone over to check. As a result, the 2 policemen who came, like her, disappeared for a few days and then reappeared. Anyway, no one was missing or dead. Naturally, our bosses were too lazy to take care of them. As for their personalities becoming weird, who knows, maybe they encountered some stimulation. Quote. Seeing that the fat man kept talking for a long time without getting down to business, Roger thought he should remind him that his green money was not for nothing. Ahem, bro, I just want to ask the 2 of them, where are they going now? Oh, sorry, I'm a verbose person. Those two people ate and drank every night here, and liked to pick up girls and chase horses. They maxed out their credit cards in a few days, and they had no money to eat later. They also stole things. The fat man had a strange look on his face. Our chief saw that they were colleagues and that they only had some food, so we reached a settlement with the merchant and helped with some money. We didn't file a case. After the two people behind went out, they didn't know where they went. Probably let's go back to our hometown. To be honest, their behavior is really weird. They don't look like police officers at all, but more like prisoners who have been detained for a long time. Roger was thoughtful, not that he had been locked up for a long time, but that he had come to the real world for the first time in his life. Okay, thank you, officer, they are leaving this town, right? Aha, yes. If there is anything else you want to know later, you can go to the police station in the town to find me. There are not many police officers here. Just tell me my name. Okay, I'll leave first. I still have to find where they have gone. Thank you very much for your help. Roger shook hands with the fat policeman again, said goodbye to him and walked out of the breakfast shop. Fatty McPherson happily picked up the hot dog and took a big bite with satisfaction. He made some extra money early in the morning. Today was really his lucky day. Turning around and shouting, "Boss, give me another hot dog set, oh no, two. I won't lose weight today, and I will start losing weight tomorrow." Roger roughly understood what the magic mirror was. It seems to be a strange space inside. After entering, humans can achieve the same abilities as God and the Creator. More importantly, the things created inside are all real, usable, edible, and will not kill anyone from hunger. The only drawback is that I can't take out the mirror periphery. With such an incredible ability, I'm afraid Sally and the others did not enter the mirror at all, but entered an unknown dimensional space through the medium of the magic mirror. Or a bolder inference, an alchemist or a magician accidentally discovered such a dimension while exploring unknown space. So the other party used his own wisdom to get such a magic prop to fix the coordinates, so that he could enter and exit this strange dimensional space from the magic mirror. But after staying inside for a long time, he has completely become the creator. His connection with the real world is directly severed. Naturally, he cannot return through the mirror again, and others cannot find him. Roger silently took out his small notebook and wrote a line on it, equivalent exchange. When he comes into contact with all demons and demon incidents, he knows that the word exchange is necessary. There is no free lunch in the world. It is just that one side pays more and the other side pays less. The things in the magic mirror, gold or jewelry, cannot be taken out because there is no equivalent exchange. For those who are prepared to be gods inside and not return to the real world, another sub-personality will begin to appear in the real world and begin to replace them. This is the equivalent exchange of the magic mirror. After finding a relatively light breakfast restaurant, Roger silently finished his breakfast and packed a few portions, intending to take them back to Sally and George. Back at Sally's house, the two of them were still sleeping. After Roger placed the food and water he brought on the table in the living room, he began to observe around the magic mirror. The frame of the magic mirror is made of an unknown wood, with exquisite patterns carved on it. Taking out the magnifying glass he had just bought in the small town, Roger carefully magnified the patterns on it to see clearly. There are countless patterns as small as ants. If you look closely, they are all carved with dense runes. Skoy, it's amazing. This magic mirror may really be a magic door, just a medium that connects to another dimension. What made Roger uneasy was that, probably because the magic mirror was firmly cemented in the cellar by her father, Sally broke several places when she took it out. Although there is no overall damage, a few pieces of the pattern on it have rubbed off. God knows what these lost pieces are. If you go in again, you won't be able to come back. Then barbecue, Roger muttered. What's Barbie doing? Did you find anything, Luo? Roger turned around and saw that George, who still had a pair of panda eyes, was already awake, but he was obviously much better after sleeping for a few hours. It's nothing to scare me. There is food on the table. You can eat it. Also, I have found out about your two police officers. After speaking, Roger told George what he had learned, and at the same time told him his analysis of the magic mirror. You mean, we might not be able to come back after we go in? George asked with a solemn expression while eating bread. Yes, around the wooden frame of the mirror are not patterns, but magic runes. Several of them have been destroyed, which means that the magic mirror is unstable and unknown dangers may appear at any time. Is that so? After George finished eating the food, he touched his body, looking for something. Understanding that the other person was looking for cigarettes, Roger took one out of his pocket and handed it over. Don't smoke too much, otherwise you will get lung cancer sooner or later like Za Kong. Who is Za Kong? George took the cigarette, lit it, and took a long drag. An exorcist from the lonely star of heaven. All those who come with him will die a miserable death, but he himself lives an extremely nourishing life. Of course, George didn't quite understand what the lonely star of heavenly evil was, but he understood the words, "You must die a good death." Time passed by second, and George slowly finished smoking the cigarette in his hand, then stepped on the cigarette butt under his feet and stamped it. I still decided to go in. There are two of my guys inside. Even if I am an ordinary person, I can't just die without saving you. This is my duty. Luo, I'll just go in alone. You wait for me outside. If something unexpected happens and you can't come back, please say sorry to my wife and daughter. Roger rolled his eyes. George had already said this. What else could he do? He couldn't let a supporting character steal the limelight of Pig's Feet. Although his morals were not particularly high, he could not let anyone lose the limelight. I'll go in with you. You've already mentioned this. How can I let you, an ordinary person, go to such a dangerous place? George smiled and punched Roger. Although you like to use some dirty tricks to disguise yourself, I know that you have always been an upright person. No, I'm really not an upright person, and I'm not pretending. Roger was on the verge of crying. How can he do bad things these days and still make people think he is a good person? Have you decided to go in? A pleasant female voice came, and Sally, who was sleeping upstairs, also woke up. As Mr. Roger said, it's really dangerous to go inside. I think it's been so long, maybe your two police colleagues don't plan to come back at all. Sally also muttered silently in her mind. Or it may be impossible to come back, the mirror personality has completely replaced the real person. Both parties felt satisfied. The person who entered the mirror dimension world became his god and creator, while the mirror person came to the real world and became a real person. If she hadn't been unable to let go of her son, she would probably have stayed there for the rest of her life. Sally sighed secretly, going back to her busy work days and looking at a lot of maxed out credit cards every day. Life. Take a rest and recuperate your energy. Let's go back in the evening and sharpen the knife to keep up with the work of chopping wood. After all, we don't have enough physical strength to escape from danger, Roger said. You're right, I'm going to take a shower first. We'll discuss the details later and what weapons we need to prepare before we go in at night. George hadn't washed himself for a day or two, and his body was smelly. Okay, let me study these patterns first. Roger took out a camera. He wanted to take pictures of all the patterns and memorize all the runes on them. Maybe they can be used in the future. Of course Roger can't understand these runes, but others do, such as Za Kong. Roger has never seen anything he doesn't understand. Unfortunately, the other party is the only star of the gods. Even if Roger has the halo of Pig's Feet, he won't dare to stay being around him for too long. Roger enlarged the patterns on the wooden frame of the magic mirror and took pictures one by one. The high-definition camera is good and can take pictures of anything. After confirming that nothing is missing, put the camera away and find a time to pay someone to identify these runes. It might be useful. The magic in this world is an equivalent exchange. If you want to use them, you must pay the corresponding magic power. Most people will choose more powerful magic. Although those magics are beyond the endurance of their bodies, in this way, they will not die during the battle. The price will be discussed later. Most of the spells that are powerful and beyond the scope of one's own endurance are of the borrowing type. Whoever borrows them from is of course the devil, because their spells are the most powerful. The white magic of Emperor Weishan has the least interest, but its power is not that great to be honest, so Roger still loves black magic. As for how to pay it back after borrowing it, why should you pay it back if you have the ability to borrow it? We agreed that whatever you borrow from me is mine. If you don't accept it, come and beat me. These runes, taken to the dark world, can definitely be exchanged for many black magic spells. Roger happily marked each film and put it away. When the time comes, if are fake and are real, you will definitely make a lot of money. Are you really going in? I always feel that the people inside are so too real, as if they are real people. Sally asked a little worriedly. She was really left with a shadow and didn't dare to touch the magic mirror. Especially the scene where Superman of Light died made her feel as if she was the executioner, full of guilt. Well, George has 2 other guys inside. With his character, even 2 ordinary people will try to go in and save them. Sooner or later, this guy will die from his sense of justice. Roger shrugged and expressed his helplessness. He was not afraid of the monsters inside, but he was afraid that it would be over if he couldn't get out, and he didn't know the magic of time and space. That's not a sense of justice, but responsibility, the responsibility of being a police officer. A voice came from the bathroom door. After taking a bath, George obviously felt much better, and his tense spirit in recent days was greatly relieved. Would you like to prepare some weapons? I'll go to the arms supermarket in town to buy some. Roger waved his hand. No need, ordinary weapons can't be used at all, and the main problem lies in the personalities of your 2 guys, and whether they have created some weird characters. For example, the intelligent virtual character Batman Bateman hid his creator so that he could not destroy the world he created. Or, a clown. Regardless of others, Roger felt that the Joker was 100% beyond the control of the creator and that he was mentally ill. Roger told George some details of his speculation, and then asked George what kind of character his 2 colleagues were. Because their personalities may determine what they will do in the dimensional space in the magic mirror. Hearing this, Roger couldn't help but glance at Sally, who was also embarrassed by Roger's look. The ones she created were all film and television idols, and they were all muscular men. Thinking of this, Sally couldn't help but flushed. She glanced at Roger secretly, and was relieved when she saw that Roger didn't pay attention. Those 2 guys are not in the same department as me. In fact, I don't know them very well. I only know that one of them already has a family and his relationship is relatively stable, while the other is unmarried. That is to say, one of them may be able to save the real world, and the other is yet to be determined. Roger held his chin and thought for a moment. Family and emotional stability are the foundation. Of course, it is not ruled out that the other party may change his mind and abandon the family and children, but overall the chance of being rescued is definitely higher than the other one. Let's go in now. I can't sleep in this situation. The sooner we can solve it, the better. George suddenly spoke. Don't you wait until night. We can't wait any longer. Who knows what will happen if it's a few hours later. Maybe we won't be able to save him, or the magic mirror is broken and we can't get in anymore. Then, okay, I'm going to the bathroom, we'll go in right now. Roger was helpless. Of course, he didn't insist that George rest until night, but for other reasons. As we all know, the Ghost Rider can only transform at night. And during the day, after a long period of training, as long as there is no sunlight during the day, or in places where the sunlight is relatively dim, he can barely transform into a part of his body. But this is far from enough. As long as someone hits his head with a bullet, it will be cool and he will see Mephisto directly. Only at night, he has the immortal body of the Ghost Rider, and with some of the gadgets he got through deception, can he ensure his own safety. But after thinking about it again, Roger decided to accompany him in because he could deceive Bateman, his creator, because Sally was a woman. If it were a man, he might not have that chance. Okay, are you ready? Let's go, Roger asked. Let's go. George looked at the magic mirror, then touched his amulet. Gwen, Daddy will come back safely. Roger reached out and looked into the mirror. Ripples appeared on the mirror, spreading slowly like ripples. Then he walked straight in, and George followed closely behind him, and the 2 of them disappeared into the magic mirror. Sally, on the other hand, was outside, watching the 2 people as if they had entered a movie world, and then moved further and further away in the mirror world. There was once a ship out to sea. The name of this ship is Teapot. As the wind blows, she sets sail. Blow, blow hard. It won't be long before the teapot is coming. Bring us sugar, tea and rum. After Roger and George entered the magic mirror, after passing through a stretch of white road, the front suddenly became clear. What appeared in front of their eyes was an endless sea. On the harbor, countless sailors were working intensively. Some sailors on the ship sang this song with loosely related nautical lyrics and started sailing. On the crowded pier, there are noisy sounds of people coming and going everywhere, making people feel like they have entered the magical age of navigation. This is the Middle Ages. George felt dizzy, rubbed his eyes, and looked again carefully, but the scene still remained unchanged. Wearing short-sleeved shorts, tan sailors happily scrubbed the deck and washed the ship. Small businessmen and hawkers kept hawking, and some women with heavy makeup kept flirting. From time to time, they hooked up with a few sailors and walked into the streets and alleys. We're recruiting sailors, we're recruiting people. Anyone who can read stars, steer, cook, speak foreign languages, anyone with a skill can come. A man with a missing front tooth shouted loudly. George, look over there, Roger pointed to a pirate ship in the distance. Black Pearl. George opened his eyes wide. Isn't that ship the Black Pearl, the one in the movie and TV series? This world is very similar to the world before Roger traveled. The only difference is that there is no Marvel comic series, while DC comics appear on the market. Even the deeds of Captain America have been adapted into comic books with very high sales, and Coulson is one of his biggest fans. So they couldn't help but be surprised to see a pirate ship that looked just like the one in the movie. Pirates of the Caribbean. George was a little confused. Get out of the way, pretty boy, don't block the way. A one-eyed old man pushed a wooden cart and cursed. Sorry. George had a good personality and quickly got out of the way. Seeing the one-eyed old man pushing the cart forward with all his strength, George asked a little unrealistically. Luo, do you think this world is really fake? I don't know if it's fake or not. Anyway, we can't stay long. Don't forget, it's an equal exchange. If you stay for a long time, another negative you will appear to replace the real you, and then you will stay here forever. Went. Roger patted George on the shoulder and pointed to the pirate ship. I think your colleague must have also watched the movie Pirates of the Caribbean. You're saying that the ship might be his. George looked at it and found that it was indeed exactly the same as the one in the movie, in terms of appearance, sails, and some characters. Come on, let's go over and have a look. Maybe he really is your buddy, Roger said. After speaking, he took the lead and walked towards the Black Pearl docked at the dock. Here we come, we're recruiting. We'll provide food and shelter. As long as your limbs are intact, our captain knows everything. You can call you. A thin man shouted with an iron horn on the black bow. There was also a fat man, also holding a trumpet, and the two of them sang in harmony. Do you want to learn a skill? Our captain can teach you how to read the stars, steer the helm, and control the sails. As long as you are willing to come in, you can learn everything. Tomorrow's second mate will be yours. Hello, I would like to see your captain. Is he on board? Roger called. The thin man directly took out a piece of paper and said, fill in your resume on it. If you don't know how, I'll give you a few coppers and go to the dock to hire someone to write it. Then I'll come for an interview in the afternoon. Roger took it and took a look. Good guys, the pirate crew also needs to fill out their resumes. George came over and took a look. The introduction form on it was exactly the same as in modern times. The two looked at each other, and no need to ask, it was 100% one of George's colleagues. Help me tell your captain that we are his friends from New York, very good friends. The thin man glanced at Roger suspiciously and quietly pulled the fat man's hand. Fat man, have you ever heard of New York? No, is the captain from New York? Go and inform the captain. I won't go. I want you to go. If they are false, they will be beaten by the captain. The captain hates people disturbing him when he is sleeping. Roger was helpless, took out a dollar bill and threw it over. What is this? The thin man took the banknote handed over by Roger and asked curiously. Quote. Forget that these people are not from the same world. Roger touched all over his body, and when he had it, he took out a pack of cigarettes. He opened one, took out one, lit it, took a puff, and then handed the rest of the pack to the thin man. He must have recognized the smoke. The thin man smelled the smell of secondhand smoke in the air. Tobacco, also a currency like rum, was very popular among the crew. Satisfied, I took Roger's cigarette and ran back to the ship quickly. It had the advantage of not being beaten, because pirate crews were not paid. The fat man was left annoyed, regretting not running the errands first. After a while, hurried footsteps ran out of the boat and came to Roger and George. The other party turned out to be an Asian, Ah-san. Are you, George? The other party looked at Roger first and didn't recognize him, but George knew him. Although they were not familiar with each other and didn't work together, they worked in the same bureau every day, so they knew each other. Agui, it's me, I'm George. Haha, that's great. I didn't expect to meet a fellow countryman here. I'm so happy. Come on, get on my boat. Boys, take the best wine and meet to the captain's cabin. I'd entertain distinguished guests. Later, Agui warmly invited Roger and the two of them to board his Black Pearl and then went to the captain's cabin. Come on, have a taste. This wine is really good. I snatched it from another continent. Agui poured 2 glasses and handed them to Roger and George. Roger took it and greeted him warmly, but didn't drink it. George also did not drink, but went directly to the topic. Agui, how long have you been here? Do you know that this is a mirror world? Hearing George's question, Agui was stunned for a moment and asked, I know, don't you know? What about you? Why have you stayed here for so long? Everything here is fake. Don't you plan to go back? Ha 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 ha. Hearing George's question, Agui laughed for a while. Then he raised his middle finger and index finger and hit, duh. After snapping his fingers, a dozen beauties appeared out of thin air. They were all popular Hollywood actresses in bikinis. More than a dozen people came around, 2 or 3 per person. These big girls were so enthusiastic that one even sat directly on Roger's lap. Ahem, Agui, you. Man, don't you understand? This world is so beautiful. When I go back to New York, I am just a miserable policeman with nothing, and I face a bunch of excessive credit card bills every month. And every day when patrolling, I have to touch my gun with fear, for fear that someone might accidentally eat some peanuts. Agui hugged a hot actress, took a nice sip, and then finished a bottle of wine in a slurping manner. Look at what I look like. I don't need any money or good looks. Will such a beautiful girl be willing to follow me when I go back? I am God here. There are hundreds of different girls every day. I am a billionaire, not as comfortable as me. I advise you not to go back. Why are you going back? You are God in this world and you can do whatever you want. Quote. Oh, by the way, let me tell you something. If you stay here for a long time, you won't be able to go back. You have to make a decision quickly. Roger asked curiously, you also know that you won't be able to go back if you stay for a long time. Agui was lying comfortably on the rocking chair. 2 bikini actresses came up behind him and pressed his shoulders. Of course, Kamado and I came in together. Later we discovered the secret here together. When he hesitated and finally wanted to go back, he found that he couldn't get out. The original time and space door disappeared directly, so he gave up and stayed there. Here it is. Then where is he? Why can't he be seen on the ship? George asked. I don't know. When we first started, we found that our God's range was only about 10 kilometers. He couldn't be like me here at all, and the same was true when I went to other places, so we separated. I haven't seen him for a long time. Agui, let me ask you something. You have been here for so long, and the scope of your control has never become larger. Roger asked curiously. It used to be. Later, after I cut off the ties with reality, there seemed to be no restrictions. But I was too lazy to do it. It was pointless to expand my territory because it was too familiar. Roger was a little confused after hearing this. This world is completely unreasonable. Why can Sally expand infinitely without cutting off her bonds, but the rules of his world are different? Then why are you recruiting sailors? Roger asked curiously. Hey, you don't understand. God will get tired of staying in his own heaven for a long time. Agui happily put a mouthful on the actress's chest, making the hot actress feel shy. I turned my place into a Pirates of the Caribbean world. It looked very big. Later I discovered something. When you go to the border of the world, as long as the boat passes by, you will reach other places. But in other places, it is very dangerous, because there I am no longer God and have no control. If I die, I will die. That's why I recruit sailors and go exploring when I get tired of it. After speaking, Agui took out a map he drew himself and pointed at it. Here, I opened a door from here before. When I drove through, I found that a big monster appeared on the sea. It capsized my boat with one palm. I was so scared that I wet my pants. Here, after I went there, I found that it was also a sea, and then there was an island. When I went up there, there were skeletons. I recruited a lot of boys. After I finally got there, I found an ugly fruit. That fruit can actually bring it back. Guess what happened when I ate it after I came back? Agui smiled mysteriously and conjured up something exactly the same. Devil fruit. Roger recognized this thing at a glance. When Agui heard this, he was stunned. Do you know this too? I read it in a comic, and it seemed that eating it would give you superpowers. Haha, yes, look at my hand. After speaking, Agui stretched out his hand directly and reached the end of the wall. George didn't understand and asked, aren't you a god in your own territory? It seems to be the same whether you have superpowers or not. It's different, it's different. I went to other places and I was just an ordinary person. But after I ate this fruit, I could actually use it in other places. That's why I'm so keen on exploring other places. Roger touched his chin thoughtfully. He had a vague guess that he probably understood it. Equivalent exchange. As for the ability of this fruit, if Roger's guess is correct, it cannot be used as long as it exits the world of the mirror dimension, because there is no equivalent exchange. As for why it can be used in this dimension, I don't know. Oh, by the way, you are going to find Kamato. It's best to go there early, because if you stay here for a long time, you won't be able to go back. When you get to the exit of the magic mirror, it will be blocked by a transparent glass, which cannot be broken no matter what. Roger knew that it was not glass, but something like a world wall. Well, without further ado, let's set off now. Agui, are you really no longer determined to go back? If you stay here, there might be danger one day. George didn't finish his words, because Sally's mother was like this, disappearing into the mirror world. She didn't know how. Maybe she was eaten. Ha 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 ha, I won't go back. I am also an orphan in New York, and this world is much more interesting, and people are just like living. The real world has blacklisted me. I tried, but I can't break through it at all. That glass. Then Agui waved his hand, and more than a dozen bikini beauties on the scene disappeared immediately. By the way, you must be careful, because in other people's territory, if you die, you will really die. Look at this. Agui opened his clothes and covered the area from his ribs to his shoulders. There is a long scar. If you are injured, you may actually die. Be careful. When he took Roger and George to the deck, Agui put on his captain's hat. He turned to Roger and smiled. How about it? Isn't it cool? Roger smiled and gave a thumbs up. Yes, very Captain Jack style. Hee, I think so too. Okay, kids, raise the sails and the boiler is on fire. We're going to sea. George looked at the two of them helplessly, but he also felt very novel about this place. To be honest, this place is really like an adventure world. George said. It is estimated that such a magical journey will only happen once in this life. I will write it in my diary and tell it to Gwen in the future. Roger also smiled and said, I guess Gwen will think it's a fairy tale like Anderson. By the way, do you want to try what it feels like to be a god? Just like Agui, omnipotent. George was a little moved, but after thinking about it, he shook his head. Forget it, Gwen and her daughter are still waiting for me to come back. I'm afraid I won't be able to withstand the temptation and I'll be in trouble. After speaking, he lowered his head, touched the cross on his neck, and smiled. Raise the sails and go to sea. The huge black sailboat began to slowly sail out of the sea, and then the speed became faster and faster, and it felt like a sports car. For a moment, George and Roger almost lost their footing and staggered around. Haha, that's right, my black pearl is the fastest. The last time I explored other territories, it was because it ran fast enough that I saved a small life. Agui stood on the rudder of the ship, haha laughed. Man, what should you do if you encounter a place that is not the sea? It's useless no matter how fast the boat is. Roger said. Hey, who said boats can't run on land? My boat can run just as fast on land. Agui said boldly. Little ones, turn on the speakers and play a song. A group of strange sailors began to laugh and make a fuss, and then sang a song. Let's go and start again. As far as I know, the battle is still ongoing. The rope hasn't been cut yet, and the whale hasn't left yet. The teapot horn keeps sounding. Encouragement to the captain, crew and all. It won't be long before the teapot is coming. Okay, I will send you here. This is the end of the world. After here, it is other people's territory. As for you going to Kamato's territory, just concentrate on it and enter it, just like it's like you come to my place. Ajayi thought for a while, took out a few fruits again, and handed them to Roger and George. I grew this from the seeds of that fruit. After my crew members eat it, they can go to other worlds and use their superpowers. I don't know if it will be useful if you eat it, so I gave it to you. Thank you, Aguiyi, you were really nice. After George took the fruit, he thanked him again. Haha, you're welcome. I've planted a lot. That's it. Goodbye, you two. Ajayi said goodbye to the two of them boldly, and then left with a group of younger brothers. I originally thought that this mission shouldn't be difficult, but I didn't expect it to be so magical. Alas, George sighed. Isn't this good? There are no deaths or murders. In the real world, there is also an Ajayi who is alive and well, but with a different personality. That's what I'm worried about. I don't know if Aguiyi, who has a negative personality, will break the law in the real world. George's worries are not unreasonable, because although the real world that appears is also a human being, it is formed by another side of human personality, which will expose many dark things hidden behind the personality. By the way, can this fruit be eaten? George picked up a bunch of fruit that looked like a rake, but it exuded the fragrance of fruit. It was the appearance that made people unable to eat. Eat it, just treat it like a toy. You can play with it after eating. If my guess is correct, this thing will be useless when you leave the real world. Roger felt more and more that the alchemist or magician who created the magic mirror might be a genius. Regardless of whether he discovered this dimension or created it, he deserved the word genius. He threw the other fruits into the system space, then picked up one of them and took a bite. Roger's eyes lit up, and he gave a thumbs-up gesture to George as a great gesture. When George saw this, he no longer hesitated. He took a big bite and the fruit melted in his mouth. Ah, what the hell is this? It tastes worse than durian, it's just like shit. Luo, why do you look like you're enjoying it? George retched and vomited. Ha 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 ha, it's a difficult thing to bear. If I don't pretend to be something so unpalatable, how could you be fooled? Roger said with a thief smile. George, don't run away, let me punch you. Walking in the white world, the two of them were joking and concentrating. Soon, a transparent glass-like film appeared in front of them. Let's go, this should be Kamato's world. Roger pointed ahead. George nodded, covered his mouth, and walked forward. By the way, Luo, when you speak, don't point your mouth towards me. The smell of shit is too strong. Quote. The two passed through the film and entered Kamato's world. This is New York. There are skyscrapers everywhere on the busy streets, and there are also dense LED advertising screens. The streets are full of office workers coming and going. On the news, there was news about one person, and that person was Kamato. Kamato defeated Black Bama with 303 votes to 232 votes and was successfully elected as the President of the United States this term. Let us congratulate him. On the news, the host held the microphone and said excitedly. After hearing the news, countless pedestrians on the street began to cheer and applaud, and then threw their hats and other things into the sky, as if they had won a world war. Come on, this one is better at playing. Now that I'm the president, I don't feel like I need to look for him anymore. Let's go, George. But George seemed a little hesitant, because his adult experience told him that what Roger said was right. But leaving without seeing the other party seems unreasonable. Maybe the other party wants to leave. These two gentlemen, please show me your ID. It turned out that when Roger and George were standing on the street chatting, two patrol policemen saw them and came up for questioning without hesitation. George looked at the two black patrolmen in surprise, not expecting that he would also be interrogated one day. Roger blinked. This style of painting felt a little wrong. Sir, could you please put your hands on your head? One of the black patrolmen had a look in his eyes and had already put his hand on his holster. Not wanting to suffer the immediate consequences, Roger and George raised their hands obediently. Hey, man, don't get too excited. I'm also a police officer. Can I take my ID? George said. Okay, but you have to move slowly. I hope you won't do anything stupid. Another big black man pointed his gun at them. George had no choice but to slowly put his hand into his pocket under the eyes of the two big black men, and then took out his police ID. He was most familiar with this process, but it was just him doing it to some criminals before, and now it was him, and he felt very awkward. Ha 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 ha. Roger couldn't help laughing. Why are you laughing? George took out his ID and rolled his eyes at Roger. Of course I'm laughing at you. I didn't expect you to be interrogated as a criminal one day. Hee hee, I really want to take a camera and capture it. Shut up. This time it was Roger's turn to shut up and look at the three of them obediently. Call the main station. Call the main station. Help me check. The police number is NAO 577AXXXX. The name is George Stacy. One of them, Dahe, held a walkie-talkie and said something to the main station, but the next second, his face immediately changed. Take them both back. The documents are fake. This person is not a policeman. George suddenly remembered that although this was New York, it was not New York in reality, so his ID was here. Another big black guy took out the handcuffs and was about to lock the two of them up. Hee hee, I never thought you would be arrested one day. Roger said jokingly. Okay, Luo, I have a bad feeling. After the big black man handcuffed the two of them, he was obviously relieved and escorted the two of them to the police car. Be honest and tell me where you got the fake ID when you get to the station, you white-skinned pig. After saying that, he punched George so hard that he immediately vomited. Suddenly, a smell worse than feces floated in the air. The two big black men were immediately made nauseous by the smell. They stared at George and subconsciously covered their mouths and noses. Boom. After two heavy punches, the two big black men fell to the ground, and Roger clapped his hands neatly. Luo, why did you knock them unconscious, and why are your handcuffs gone? George looked at Roger in surprise, and unlocked them in a second. Is this a thief's skill? Don't worry about the details. I can put away the motorcycle. A handcuff is nothing. Besides, if I don't knock them out, will they be sent to the police station? It will be troublesome if they do. And, haven't you noticed, it's the other way around, hee hee. Roger said happily. What's the other way around? George asked. Ever since he entered this virtual city, he felt awkward, but he couldn't figure out where it was. This feeling became clearer and clearer, and there was only a layer of paper between him and someone to help him pierce it. Get in the car and I'll show you around. Roger happily patted the police car. George didn't hesitate, and the two got into the police car together. Roger, who was sitting in the car, sounded the siren, and then drove specifically to where there were white people. Wherever they went, white people gave way one after another, fearful of police cars like rats. What's going on? George looked more and more puzzled, but he seemed to understand, and waited for Roger to answer. It's the other way around. What else? Black and white are reversed. Hey, look at those billboards above. Roger happily pointed to the advertisements on the street and the LED advertising screens. All models appearing in advertisements are black, and very few are white. The situation on the street is also reversed. Black people are polite, wear white collar suits, and are polite and modest. White people are rude, dancing hip-hop on the street, and from time to time they mask themselves and enter convenience stores to rob. The police car passed by several white people, and they looked extremely nervous, as if the people in the police car would come down to question them or treat them to peanuts in the next second. Slowly, George understood. He opened his mouth wide and said in disbelief, Jeonju is discriminating. Yes, in the real world of New York, it's completely reversed here, and the criminals become white. And hey, people are the backbone of the country, the white-collar workers, the elite class. I think we'd better get out of here quickly. It's obvious that your guy has changed since he came here, haha. If Roger's thousands of episodes of Death's Little Monk were not in vain, this George's fool is a swine discriminator. In reality, I was discriminated against a lot, and later I became a police officer. Secretly, I may still remember the past things in my mind, and it became an obsession. When he decided to abandon his family and stay in this world, he began to take revenge on his former life. No matter how deeply you have been hurt in reality, how big your reaction will be when you become a god. Luo, you were right, we need to leave quickly. George began to agree with Roger's statement. No one can tell whether this former colleague will still abide by the laws in reality. After all, even the person has changed. Therefore, George no longer struggled to rescue his two guys, and it was safest to leave here quickly. This station is interrupting an emergency news report. Two unknown persons have just attacked two police officers on Brook Street. The photo of the criminal is as follows. Please note that they are not citizens of this country and can be killed directly if they are in danger. On the advertising screen of a supermarket on the roadside, a female black reporter was interrupting what just happened. The most wanted criminals above are Roger and George. Trouble, Luo, we are wanted by the whole city. What fact, who are you? When George turned to look at Roger, he was almost scared to death. Because in the driver's seat, he turned into a black man at some point, all dressed in black. If it weren't for the fact that the clothes and shoes belonged to Roger, George would have almost pulled out his gun. Hey, don't be nervous, man, it's just you who is in trouble, not me, hee, Roger gloated, the effect of the vest finally showing. Are you Luo? George said in disbelief, and reached out to touch Roger's skin to make sure it was not ink. Roger slapped the other person's hand away, otherwise, as an exorcist, it's logical to have several vests. But, you are too. What can you do? Help me change my appearance. Sorry, the vest is my personal exclusive. I can't give it to others. The author won't let it. Quote. While the two were talking, a person far away in the White House was listening to the report of his subordinates with great interest. Then I turned on the TV and saw that one person was unfamiliar, and the other turned out to be George, a former colleague from the police station. Perhaps it was because he was too boring and he could just pass the game. So after confirming that George was a colleague in the real world, the black man named Kamato immediately had the idea of playing the game. After giving some instructions to his men, they nodded and left. Kamato crossed his legs and waited happily to watch the news. Luo, we have to change cars. The police car is too conspicuous. What you said is good, but I think it's useless, because this is his territory, and he must know it. If he wants to be disadvantageous to us, it doesn't matter what car he changes to. Roger finally stopped the car, but you were right, change the car and lower his guard, if he really intends to do us harm. Finally, he looked at a women's clothing store on the roadside, tilted his head, and glanced at George. George. After a while, a tall, dark-skinned ant came out. The clerk inside had been knocked unconscious by Roger, tied up and thrown away. You're pretty good in women's clothing. It seems you have the potential to be an agent. Yes, George wore makeup to look like a black ant because it was easier to avoid arousing suspicion. Stop joking, the most important thing for us now is to find a way to escape quickly. Do you know where the exit is? George said, dissatisfied. Roger took out a pair of sunglasses and put them on his face, then opened the eye of judgment and looked around. This dimension, how should I say, is a bit like a kaleidoscope. There are exits everywhere, or it may not be everywhere, because it only needs to break a mirror to create a gap. The problem is that some mirrors look very strong, and some look very fragile. At first glance, they look like mirrors that have just been born. All we have to do is run to the weaker mirror, and then break it with one shot to get out. Quote. George followed Roger's gaze and couldn't see anything. Where is the exit? Kamato is the creator of this world, but he will not carefully construct every detail of the world. In places where the world was just born, the mirrors are relatively fragile, so we can just run there. In other words, just outside the city. Then Roger looked around. Those cars were all transformed from Kamato's world. If Kamato had any ill intentions towards them, it would disappear as long as he thought about it. If it's not safe, then don't do it. Roger doesn't like to rely on others for his safety, so he reaches behind his butt and pulls out a Harley motorcycle. George, get in the car, we have to hurry up, he is a wanted criminal in the city now. George's face was twitching. Although he was once again surprised by Roger's magic, he knew that now was not the time to ask this question, so he got on his motorcycle directly. Let's go, let's go. Boom. After a roar of the motorcycle, Roger turned the accelerator to the maximum and drove off. At this time, the streets are full of FBI, CIA, and miscellaneous police officers. There is no doubt that they are all fools. Then these policemen were looking for two people, George and Roger, a mixed-race man. Their faces were like PhD supervisors all over the city. The unreasonable world is like this. The entire city's media, having had enough to eat and nothing to do, just put the heads of two wanted criminals on the TV station. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.